living alone as an older person comes with hidden perks that you might not expect. In this video, we're diving into 12 life-changing benefits that come with embracing solitude. From personal freedom to unexpected joys, these insights could transform the way you look at living solo. Stick with us until the end for a game-changing tip you won't want to miss. Number 1. Independence and autonomy. Living alone as an older person opens the door to a kind of independence that's uniquely yours. It's about calling the shots on everything. From the simplest decisions, like what time to have breakfast, to the bigger ones, like how to spend your day or organize your home, the freedom is all yours. There's no compromise, no back and forth, and no worrying about whether your choices align with someone else's preferences. It's your world, your rules, and that's a pretty liberating feeling. When you're the captain of your own ship, there's this empowering sense of control. Want to blast your favorite music at 7 a.m.? Go for it. Feel like having cereal for dinner or skipping chores to read a novel? No one's there to second-guess your decisions or raise an eyebrow. It's the simple joy of doing things your way, every day, without interruption. And let's talk about routines, those sacred patterns that make your days flow. When you live alone, your routine can be whatever works for you. Early bird? Night owl? Somewhere in between? Doesn't matter. You get to mold your schedule around your energy, interests, and mood, not someone else's. That's a kind of flexibility that feels like a gift, especially when you've spent years accommodating others. The beauty of autonomy also means you can truly listen to yourself. Living alone gives you space to tune into your own needs, whether it's taking a nap in the middle of the afternoon or starting a new hobby that's completely out of left field. You can explore, experiment, and even reinvent yourself without worrying about judgment or practicality. Want to take up painting, even if you've never picked up a brush? There's no one to say, but why? It's a freedom that's as refreshing as it is transformative. Then there's the home itself, a canvas you can decorate, arrange, or even leave delightfully messy exactly how you please. You can fill it with colors, textures, and objects that make you happy. Every inch of it reflects your personality, and there's something deeply satisfying about that. But autonomy isn't just about the fun stuff. It's also about being self-reliant and knowing you can handle life on your own terms. There's a quiet confidence that builds when you realize you're capable of managing your own affairs, making decisions, and solving problems. It's a reminder that age doesn't diminish your ability to lead your life with purpose and strength. Of course, living alone isn't perfect. There are moments when solitude might feel, well, a little too quiet. But even those moments can teach you something about resilience. They push you to find creative ways to stay connected with others while still holding onto your independence. In the end, independence and autonomy are gifts of living solo in later years. It's a lifestyle that lets you take the wheel, make your own map, and enjoy the journey at your own pace. And honestly, isn't that the kind of freedom we all dream of? Number 2, peace and quiet. Ah, peace and quiet. Those two little words can mean so much, can't they? When you live alone, especially in your later years, peace and quiet aren't just concepts, they're a whole lifestyle. No more background noise you didn't ask for. No endless chatter or the TV blaring a show you're not watching. Just pure, unfiltered silence, like a blank canvas where you get to paint your own world. When you think about it, living alone gives you the freedom to tune into the sounds, or the lack of them, that you actually enjoy. Maybe it's the rhythmic ticking of a clock, the gentle hum of a ceiling fan, or even the rustling of leaves outside your window. These subtle sounds often get drowned out in a busy household, but when it's just you, they become part of a soothing symphony. It's a kind of calm that doesn't demand anything from you. No interruptions, no chaos, just space to breathe. And let's talk about the mental clarity that comes with quiet surroundings. When the world isn't constantly vying for your attention, your mind feels lighter. You can sit with your thoughts without being pulled in a dozen directions. You might find yourself reflecting more, daydreaming a little, or simply enjoying the freedom to think about nothing at all. It's in these quiet moments that you often stumble upon the best ideas or come to terms with things you hadn't even realized were weighing on you. But don't mistake peace and quiet for loneliness. They're not the same thing, not even close. In fact, the absence of constant noise and activity often makes you more appreciative of the connections you do have. When you live in a quiet home, even a short phone call or a visit from a friend feels more meaningful. It's like the calm creates a space where every interaction gets its own spotlight. There's also something to be said for being the sole master of your environment. Want to spend an entire day in silence, reading, or just staring out the window? Go for it. Feel like cranking up your favorite song and dancing around? Why not? You're in control, and that kind of freedom can be incredibly empowering. The beauty of peace and quiet is that it invites you to slow down and savor life. Without the constant buzz of activity, you notice things you might have otherwise missed, the way sunlight spills across the floor, the texture of a cozy blanket, or the way your favorite tea tastes on a chilly evening. These small joys become more vivid when you're not distracted by the noise of the world. Living alone doesn't mean shutting out the world, it means curating how and when you let it in. And when you have peace and quiet as your default, the moments you do choose to engage with others or step into a lively environment feel all the more special. It's like having a secret retreat that you can always return to, a sanctuary built just for you. Number 3, reduced social stress or conflicts. Living alone as an older person can be a breath of fresh air, especially when it comes to reducing social stress or avoiding conflicts. Let's face it, sharing your space with others, no matter how much you care about them, can sometimes feel like a balancing act. Personalities clash, opinions differ, and tempers, well, they can flare. When you live alone, you get to step away from that whirlwind. It's not about isolation, it's about choosing peace over unnecessary friction. Think about it, your home becomes your sanctuary, a space where you call all the shots. No awkward compromises about what to watch on TV, no debates over how the furniture should be arranged, and certainly no arguments about who forgot to take out the trash. There's an unspoken joy in knowing that your preferences are the law of the land within your four walls. You're free to create an environment that feels like an extension of yourself, without needing anyone else's approval. There's also a certain calmness that comes with not having to navigate daily interactions with others in close quarters. Let's be honest, even the most well-meaning conversations can sometimes veer into choppy waters. Misunderstandings, unintended slights, or just plain differing moods can stir up tension. When you're alone, you can skip all that. You don't have to tiptoe around someone else's bad day or brace yourself for a heated debate over something trivial. This freedom doesn't mean cutting yourself off from the world, it's more like choosing how and when you want to engage with it. Living alone gives you the power to set boundaries without guilt. If you feel like chatting, you can reach out to friends, neighbors, or family. But if you're in the mood for solitude, you can sink into the silence guilt-free. No need to explain yourself or worry about how your need for alone time might be perceived by someone else. Another underrated perk? The emotional clarity that comes with reduced conflict. When you don't have to constantly navigate other people's emotions or opinions, you can focus more on your own well-being. You might even find it easier to process your thoughts, reflect on your day, or just enjoy the simple pleasure of existing without interruption. It's amazing how much mental energy you save when you're not caught up in the small stresses of cohabitation. Of course, this doesn't mean life suddenly becomes perfect or stress-free when you live alone. Challenges still exist, but they're yours to tackle in your own way and at your own pace. Without the added layer of social stress, you might find yourself feeling lighter, more in control, and even more optimistic. Living alone doesn't just quiet the noise around you, it can quiet the noise within you, too. Number 4, more control over the living environment. When you live alone, you become the ultimate architect of your space. Think about it, every single decision, from where the couch goes to whether you even have a couch, is entirely up to you. No compromises, no debates, no needing to explain why you absolutely must have a wall of plants in the living room or a bright orange rug in the hallway. It's a little like having a blank canvas, and the only person holding the paintbrush is you. You get to shape your environment to fit your mood, your preferences, and your lifestyle. Love minimalism? You can clear out every unnecessary thing and create a serene, clutter-free haven. Prefer a cozy, eclectic vibe? Pile on the throws, stack up the books, and string fairy lights across every available surface. Your space reflects you, your quirks, your tastes, and what makes you feel most at home. And isn't that the dream, to come home to a place that feels like it was made just for you? But it's not just about decorating. Living alone means you have full control over how your home functions. You can set the thermostat to your exact comfort level, no more fighting over whether it's too hot or too cold. You decide when the windows stay open to let in a fresh breeze or when they're shut tight to keep the world outside. Even the fridge is entirely yours. Stock it with your favorite snacks, organize it however you like, or don't organize it at all. No one's going to complain about your penchant for storing dessert in the vegetable drawer. And the noise levels? Pure bliss. If you want complete silence, you've got it. If you feel like blasting your favorite songs or binge-watching an entire series at full volume, go for it. There's no one to shush you, and no one to interrupt your vibe. You control the soundtrack to your life, whether it's classical music in the background while you read or the sound of a bustling kitchen as you cook your favorite meals. Then there's the little rituals. You get to decide how the day begins and ends. Maybe mornings are all about sipping tea in your sunniest corner, or nights are for winding down with a dimly lit room in your favorite book. Whatever makes you feel good, you can prioritize it, without accommodating someone else's habits or routines. There's a quiet power in creating an environment that supports you, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Of course, let's not forget the freedom to keep things as clean, or as messy, as you want. You can vacuum every day, or you can let a few dishes pile up guilt-free. It's your space, your rules. In the end, having more control over your living environment is more than just convenience, it's about living in a space that feels uniquely yours. It's the freedom to make your home a sanctuary, a playground, or a mix of both. It's about living on your own terms, every single day. Number 5, freedom to create a personal routine. Let's talk about routines. When you live alone, especially as an older adult, you get the ultimate privilege, the freedom to craft your days exactly how you want. Think about it, there's no one else's schedule to juggle, no compromises over what happens when, and no nagging sense that you're tiptoeing around someone else's needs. It's your world, and you get to decide how it spins. You can wake up when your body says it's time, not when someone else's alarm screams at the crack of dawn. Maybe you're an early riser who thrives on watching the sun stretch its rays across the sky, or maybe mornings aren't your thing, and you prefer the soft quiet of late nights. Living alone gives you permission to embrace whatever rhythm suits you best. No judgment, no guilt, just you, living on your own terms. And let's not overlook meals. Oh, the joy of eating what you want, when you want. Breakfast at 2 p.m.? Sure. Dinner at 4:30 because you're feeling peckish? Why not? Living alone means you're not bound by traditional meal times or someone else's preferences. It's a chance to rediscover what truly makes you happy when it comes to food, whether that's experimenting in the kitchen or keeping things as simple as toast and tea. Exercise, hobbies, downtime, it's all yours to shape. Feel like taking a leisurely walk in the afternoon? Go for it. Want to spend an entire day knitting, gardening, or indulging in a good book? There's no one around to tell you otherwise. And if you decide today is just going to be a day of unapologetic rest, that's perfectly fine too. Living alone means your routine can flex and bend to match how you're feeling, not what someone else expects from you. One of the best things about creating your own routine is how deeply personal it becomes. You're not just filling up hours, you're designing a life that fits like a custom-tailored suit. Over time, you start to notice patterns, things that energize you, moments that bring you peace. Without distractions or external pressures, you get to refine your days until they feel just right. It's a quiet, satisfying kind of self-discovery. And let's be honest, there's a thrill in not having to explain yourself to anyone. Want to spend an hour meditating, followed by an impromptu dance party in your living room? Do it. Want to skip the news and play your favorite music instead? Go ahead. It's your time, your space, your choice. There's a certain joy in the unpredictability, in knowing that you can switch things up whenever you feel like it. Living alone lets you escape the rigidity of shared schedules and embrace a life that flows naturally for you. It's not about being selfish, it's about finally giving yourself the time and space to prioritize what makes you feel alive. And that freedom? That's priceless. Number 6, stronger sense of self-reliance. Living alone as an older person has this incredible way of reshaping how you see yourself. It's like a gentle nudge, or sometimes a bold shove, into a world where you realize just how capable you truly are. You're the captain of your own ship, steering through the days without anyone else's hand on the wheel. And while that might sound a bit daunting at first, it's actually one of the most empowering feelings you can experience. When you live alone, you're the one calling the shots. It's up to you to decide what needs to be done and when. No one's there to remind you to pay a bill or to fix the leaky faucet, you just figure it out. At first, you might hesitate, maybe even second-guess yourself, but over time, something clicks. You start trusting your instincts more. You develop this quiet confidence in your ability to handle whatever comes your way. It's not about being perfect or always knowing the answers, it's about knowing you'll figure it out, no matter what. And let's talk about the little victories. They might not seem like much to anyone else, but to you, they're monumental. Whether it's learning to cook something new, mastering a piece of technology, or organizing your home exactly how you like it, these moments are proof that you're thriving. You're no longer waiting on someone else to step in and solve things for you, you've got this, and it feels amazing. There's also this sense of freedom that comes with self-reliance. You're not tied to anyone else's schedule, expectations, or needs. You get to prioritize your own goals, whether they're big, like starting a new hobby, or small, like taking your time with a morning coffee. It's all up to you, and that independence creates a stronger connection to your own desires and preferences. You get to know yourself better because there's no one else around influencing your choices. What's really interesting is how this self-reliance spills over into other parts of your life. You start noticing a shift in how you approach challenges. Things that might have felt overwhelming before don't seem so intimidating anymore. You've faced the little obstacles that come with living alone, and those small wins build up into a reservoir of resilience. Suddenly, you're tackling bigger things with more ease, less worry, and a whole lot more faith in yourself. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, of course. There are moments where living alone can feel like a lot. But even in those tougher times, there's growth. You learn how to push through, how to lean on your own strength, and how to find solutions that work for you. And the best part? Each challenge you overcome just reinforces how capable you are. It's a cycle of self-reliance feeding into self-confidence, and it only gets stronger the longer you embrace it. Number 7, easier to maintain cleanliness and organization. When you're living alone, keeping your home clean and organized feels like a much simpler task. Why? Because it's all under your control. No one else is leaving dishes in the sink, scattering socks across the floor, or mysteriously forgetting to take out the trash. It's just you and your space, and that makes managing it so much more straightforward. Think about it, everything stays exactly where you left it. If you arrange your books alphabetically or keep your pantry perfectly sorted, no one's going to disrupt your system. You're in charge of the flow, and that kind of control can be incredibly satisfying. On the flip side, if you're someone who doesn't mind a little chaos, you can let things get as messy as you're comfortable with, knowing that no one else is going to complain. It's your space, your vibe. Cleaning becomes less of a chore when you're not cleaning up after someone else. There's no frustration over crumbs left on the counter or shoes tracking mud across your freshly mopped floor. You clean up after yourself, and that's it. It feels fair, balanced, and somehow less exhausting because the workload is entirely predictable. Plus, when you're the only one in the house, messes don't seem to appear out of nowhere. You know where the dirt came from, and you can tackle it on your own terms. And let's talk about time. When you're not splitting duties or waiting for someone else to pitch in, you can set your own cleaning schedule. Want to clean the bathroom at 10 p.m.? Go for it. Prefer to tackle dusting and vacuuming on Sunday mornings? That works too. Living alone means you're in charge of when and how things get done. No one else's preferences or habits need to factor into the equation, which can make the whole process feel less stressful and more manageable. Organization also takes on a new life when it's just you. You get to decide how your space is laid out. Need all your kitchen gadgets within arm's reach? Done. Want your closet arranged by color, season, or mood? It's entirely up to you. You don't have to accommodate someone else's way of doing things, so your organization system can be exactly as detailed, or as relaxed, as you want it to be. But perhaps the best part of it all is the peace of mind that comes with having a tidy space. When your surroundings are clean and organized, it can make your mind feel clearer too. There's less clutter to distract you, less stress about things being out of place. And because you're the one maintaining it, there's a sense of pride in knowing that your home reflects your efforts and your style. In short, living alone makes it easier to maintain a home that feels just right for you. Whether you're a neat freak or someone who thrives in organized chaos, you get to decide how your space looks, feels, and functions, and that's a pretty great perk. Number 8, opportunity to rediscover and nurture old hobbies or skills. Living alone as an older person can feel like opening a forgotten drawer in your mind, one filled with all the hobbies and skills you used to love but somehow left behind. Without the constant demands of others tugging at your attention, you finally have the time, space, and freedom to dive back into those passions that once brought you so much joy. It's like reconnecting with an old friend, except this time, that friend is you. Remember that thing you used to do that made hours feel like minutes? Maybe it was painting, playing an instrument, writing, crafting, or something completely unique to you. Whatever it was, it's still there, waiting patiently for you to come back. Living alone gives you the chance to dust off those memories and turn them into something real again. There's no pressure, no deadlines, just the sheer pleasure of doing something you love for no other reason than it makes your soul happy. The beauty of rediscovering hobbies is that it's not about perfection. It's about enjoyment. When you're on your own, there's no one hovering around, judging how good or bad you are at something. You can experiment, make mistakes, and laugh at yourself in the process. Who cares if your knitting is a little uneven or if your sketch doesn't look quite like what you imagined? It's yours, and that's what matters. And let's not forget the feeling of accomplishment. Picking up an old skill, or even learning a new one, has a way of reminding you just how capable you are. It might start small, the satisfaction of finishing a puzzle, writing a short story, or planting a flower and watching it bloom. But those little wins build up, and before you know it, you're glowing with the pride of having created something tangible, something new. Living alone also means you have the time to get lost in the process. You can spend an entire afternoon fiddling with something, tweaking it until it feels right, or diving so deep into a project that you lose track of time. There's no one around to pull you away, no interruptions to break your focus. It's just you and your craft, your art, your whatever it is that makes your heart sing. And here's the best part: when you nurture old hobbies or skills, you're not just rekindling something from the past. You're creating something new in the present. You're giving yourself permission to grow, evolve, and find fresh ways to express yourself. It's not about turning back the clock, it's about moving forward with a piece of yourself that you may have forgotten. So go ahead. Pick up that paintbrush, that guitar, that notebook, that toolkit. Rediscover the simple, unfiltered joy of doing something just because it makes you happy. Living alone is the perfect time to remind yourself that you're never too old to play, to create, or to fall back in love with the things that make you, you. Number 9. No compromises on lifestyle choices. One of the absolute joys of living alone is the sweet, unfiltered freedom to live life exactly how you want. There's no need to tiptoe around someone else's preferences, no awkward negotiations about what's acceptable or what isn't. You're in charge, plain and simple. It's your life, your rules, and your choices. How often do you get that kind of luxury? Let's start with the basics, your daily routine. When you live alone, you get to decide what your day looks like without a second thought about how it fits into someone else's schedule. Want to stay up late binge-watching shows? Go for it. Prefer waking up at the crack of dawn to enjoy the quiet stillness of morning? Be my guest. Whether it's eating meals at odd hours or skipping them altogether because you're not hungry, there's no one around to judge or try to convince you otherwise. It's your rhythm, and it flows however you want it to. Then there's the joy of creating a space that feels completely yours. Living alone means no debates over decor or compromises on comfort. Your home can be a reflection of exactly who you are. Paint the walls a bold color, fill the shelves with quirky knickknacks, or keep the place minimal and spotless. It's entirely up to you. This isn't just about aesthetics, it's about creating an environment that truly feels like home, without needing to cater to anyone else's taste. And let's talk about lifestyle choices. Whether you're the kind of person who loves a neat and tidy space or someone who thrives in a bit of organized chaos, it's your call. Nobody's nagging you to clean up your mess or questioning your definition of comfort. The freedom to live in a way that feels right to you is one of those underrated perks that you only really appreciate when you're living alone. There's also the beauty of embracing hobbies, routines, or habits without having to explain yourself. Maybe you're a night owl who loves working on puzzles at 2 a.m. Or maybe you've taken up dancing, and you like practicing in the living room without worrying about an audience. When you're alone, there's no pressure to justify your quirks or feel self-conscious about what brings you joy. Even your diet can be a personal playground. Want to eat the same thing every day because it's easy and comforting? Done. Feel like experimenting with recipes or trying unconventional food combinations? No one's raising an eyebrow at your choices. Living alone means every little thing you do is on your terms, no compromises, no guilt. Ultimately, it's not just about avoiding conflicts or sidestepping disagreements. It's about having the space to fully embrace who you are, quirks and all, without needing to accommodate anyone else's opinions or expectations. This freedom to live authentically, without compromise, is something that can make each day feel just a little bit brighter. Number 10. More time to nurture friendships and platonic connections. When you live alone, your time becomes entirely yours to manage, which can open up so many opportunities to strengthen the relationships that really matter to you. Think about it, no one else's schedule, needs, or preferences are dictating how you spend your time. You get to decide when, where, and how you want to connect with others. It's incredibly freeing, and it makes cultivating meaningful friendships so much easier. One of the best things about having your own space is that you can invest in the people you genuinely enjoy being around, without the distractions or compromises that come with sharing a home. You're not trying to balance someone else's social circle with yours, or figuring out how to host guests in a way that doesn't bother your housemate. You can invite friends over whenever you like, plan gatherings on a whim, or just have a quiet coffee with someone you care about, all on your own terms. And let's not forget about the sheer joy of uninterrupted quality time. When you meet up with friends or make a call to catch up, you can be fully present. Living alone means there's no one in the background vying for your attention or pulling you away. You can focus on the conversation, laugh until your cheeks hurt, or dive into deep, meaningful chats without feeling rushed or distracted. It's a way of connecting that feels more intentional, more fulfilling. Another huge plus is flexibility. Living solo allows you to shape your day in a way that prioritizes your friendships. Whether that means taking the time to respond to messages thoughtfully, arranging last-minute plans, or dedicating an afternoon to reconnecting with someone you haven't seen in a while, the choice is entirely yours. You're not tied down by someone else's routine, and that means more room to nurture the connections that truly matter. Then there's the beauty of shared experiences. Because your time and energy are fully within your control, you can create opportunities to experience life with friends in ways that feel authentic and fun. You can plan day trips, sign up for a class together, or just have a cozy night in with snacks and stories. When your social interactions are by choice and not by obligation, they often feel more rewarding. And here's the thing. Living alone also encourages you to seek out and value platonic relationships in a way that feels different from when you share a home with someone else. You become more intentional about reaching out, showing up, and keeping those bonds alive. It's not just about filling the silence, it's about cherishing the people who make your life brighter. Ultimately, living alone doesn't mean being alone. In fact, it can be the opposite. It gives you the time, freedom, and headspace to nurture friendships in a way that's deeper, more thoughtful, and wonderfully enriching. It's a chance to show up for the people you care about, and let them show up for you, too. Number 11, easier to downsize possessions and live a minimalist lifestyle. Let's be honest, over the years, stuff has a way of piling up. Closets, drawers, attics, even those just-in-case bins you haven't opened in a decade, they all quietly fill with things you don't really need. But when you live alone, you get this beautiful opportunity to take a step back and say, do I really need all this? Downsizing suddenly feels less overwhelming and more liberating. It's like hitting the reset button on your space and your life. Living alone makes it so much easier to decide what stays and what goes. You're not negotiating with anyone else's attachment to random items or justifying why you're letting go of that bulky furniture or those old kitchen gadgets. You can be honest with yourself. Does this object bring you joy? Does it serve a purpose? If not, out it goes. It's your call, your space, your freedom. And there's something deeply satisfying about the process of decluttering. Sure, it can be emotional at times, some things carry memories, but there's also a thrill in creating a home that feels lighter, more open, more you. When you let go of the things that don't serve you anymore, you're making room for what really matters, whether that's a favorite piece of furniture, a cozy reading nook, or simply empty space to breathe. Downsizing isn't just about possessions, it's a mindset shift. When you live alone, you start to realize how little you actually need to be happy. A comfortable chair, a good book, a cup of tea, and maybe a plant or two, that's enough to create a sense of peace. Without the clutter, your home becomes a sanctuary, a place where every corner feels intentional and calm. And let's not forget how practical it is. With fewer things, cleaning becomes a breeze. You're no longer dusting shelves filled with knickknacks or navigating around piles of stuff. Your home starts to feel more manageable, more peaceful. It's a space that works with you, not against you. Imagine spending less time maintaining your possessions and more time enjoying your life. That's the magic of minimalism. Living alone also lets you create a space that reflects who you are now, not who you were years ago. Those things you kept because they mattered to someone else? You don't need them anymore. This is your chance to design a home that feels like an extension of you, filled only with what brings you happiness or purpose. And here's the kicker: downsizing can make you feel free. Letting go of excess stuff feels like shedding a heavy coat you didn't realize you were wearing. You move through your home, in your life, with a sense of lightness and clarity. Living alone gives you the perfect reason to embrace minimalism and live with only what truly matters to you. Because, honestly, isn't that what life should be about? Number 12, easier to meet new people and develop relationships at your own pace. Living alone opens the door to meeting people and building relationships in a way that feels more natural, less rushed, and entirely on your own terms. When you're not tied to someone else's schedule, preferences, or social circles, you have the freedom to decide who you want to connect with and how deep those connections go. It's like being handed the remote control for your social life. Rewind, fast forward, pause, or play as you see fit. One of the best parts? There's no pressure. You're not obligated to entertain someone else's friends or attend gatherings just because a partner or roommate wants to go. You get to choose the social situations that excite you and skip the ones that don't. Want to spend an afternoon chatting with someone interesting over coffee? Great. Prefer to take your time before diving into new friendships? That's perfectly fine, too. It's all about pacing yourself in a way that feels comfortable and true to you. Living alone also gives you the breathing room to reflect on what you really want in your relationships. Without the constant background noise of other people's input or expectations, it's easier to focus on your needs and desires. Are you looking for deep, meaningful connections? Or maybe you're more into casual, lighthearted interactions? Whatever it is, you can approach relationships with clarity because you're not juggling conflicting priorities at home. And let's not forget the flexibility. When you're living alone, you can meet people whenever and wherever you want. Your time is your own, which means no coordinating with someone else or worrying about disrupting their routine. Feel like joining a community group or taking a class to meet people with similar interests? Go for it. Want to spontaneously accept an invitation to an event? You're free to say yes without worrying about checking in with anyone. The beauty of this independence is that it allows relationships to grow more organically. You're not rushing to fit someone into your life or trying to squeeze interactions into a crowded schedule. Instead, you can take your time, letting connections deepen naturally, without any outside pressures forcing things along. There's a certain ease in knowing that every relationship you build comes from a place of genuine interest, not obligation. On the flip side, living alone also makes it easier to set boundaries. You're not constantly surrounded by people, so you have more space to recharge when you need it. If a relationship feels too demanding or isn't adding value to your life, it's easier to step back and reevaluate without the complications that come from shared living arrangements. This balance between connection and solitude is a gift, one that lets you fully enjoy the relationships you choose to nurture while still honoring your own needs. Ultimately, living alone empowers you to create a social life that's as dynamic, fulfilling, or laid back as you want it to be. You're in the driver's seat, steering your relationships at a pace that feels just right for you. Have you ever wondered if it's time to live alone as an older person? In this video, we're sharing 15 powerful signs that might just tell you it's the right choice. From personal freedom to emotional growth, these signs could change your life. Stick around until the end for a surprising revelation that could make all the difference. You won't want to miss it. Number 1, you've had successful periods of living alone in the past and missed that experience. Let's be real, if you've lived alone before and found it to be one of the most fulfilling, peaceful, or downright exciting times of your life, that's a major clue. Think about it. The quiet mornings where you could sip your coffee without interruptions, the freedom to decorate every single corner just the way you liked, or even the weirdly satisfying thrill of dancing in your kitchen at 2 a.m. because there was no one around to stop you. Sound familiar? When you've had those periods of living alone and genuinely thrived, it leaves a mark. You start to notice how much you enjoyed the independence, the control over your own space, and the opportunity to completely focus on you. It's not just about the absence of others, it's about the presence of yourself. Living solo can feel like a return to your own rhythm, your own vibe. It's a unique kind of comfort, and once you've had it, it can be tough to let it go. Maybe you're looking around your current setup now, whether you've got roommates, family, or even a partner, and you feel this itch. It's subtle, but it's there. The little compromises you have to make, the shared routines that don't quite fit your groove, or just the fact that you can't quite unwind the way you want because someone else's energy is in the room. It's not that you don't care for the people around you, you probably do. But something deep inside might be tugging at you, reminding you of how good it felt when your space was just yours. Now, don't get me wrong. Living alone isn't for everyone, and it's definitely not a magical fix for life's ups and downs. But if you've already experienced it and found it rewarding, that's a strong signal. Maybe you love the challenge of figuring out how to handle everything solo, from fixing that leaky faucet to budgeting for groceries to deciding when and how you'd have people over, if at all. It can feel empowering to know that your home is entirely your domain, where every decision starts and ends with you. For some people, that kind of setup is more than just comfortable, it's grounding. It gives you space to breathe, to think, to grow. And as an older adult, that feeling might become even more precious. It's not about being antisocial or shutting others out. It's about recognizing that you've already thrived in this kind of environment before, and there's no reason you can't do it again. The longing to live alone isn't selfish, it's self-aware. It's about knowing what energizes you, what helps you feel calm, and what kind of space allows you to be the best version of yourself. So if those past experiences keep popping into your mind and making you smile, maybe it's time to give it another shot. Because let's face it, when you've already proven to yourself that you can live alone and love it, why not lean into that? You've done it before, and chances are, you can do it even better now. Number 2, you prefer solitude over companionship. Some people just thrive in their own space, where the only voice they hear is their own inner monologue. If that sounds like you, then maybe the idea of living alone isn't just a passing thought, it's your ideal scenario. You don't dread the quiet, you embrace it. In fact, it's where you feel most like yourself. Think about it, the endless possibilities of a space that's 100% yours. No awkward compromises over decor. No tiptoeing around someone else's schedule. You can eat cereal at 2 a.m., dance like a maniac in the kitchen, or spend an entire weekend engrossed in a book without anyone wondering if something's wrong. For you, solitude isn't loneliness, it's freedom. It's a blank canvas where you paint your days however you like. Now, this isn't about disliking people. You might enjoy company every now and then, but the constant presence of another person? That's a whole different vibe. Even the friendliest extrovert can start to feel a little crowded after a while. You might find yourself craving quiet moments to recharge or just think your own thoughts without interruption. When you live alone, those moments don't need to be scheduled, they're built into your life. There's also something deeply satisfying about being in full control of your environment. Want to play music at full blast? Go for it. Prefer utter silence? That's cool too. Living alone means you set the tone. There's no negotiation about who gets to control the thermostat or whether the TV stays on during dinner. It's your domain, and every decision is yours to make. That sense of autonomy can feel downright magical when you've spent years accommodating others. Of course, some might say that humans are social creatures and we're meant to be around others. And sure, There's truth in that. But not everyone recharges by being around people. For some, socializing feels more like a drain on energy rather than a boost. If you're nodding along, you probably find peace in being able to fully retreat into your own little world. Living alone lets you curate that perfect balance, socialize when you want, but retreat when you need. And let's not forget the small joys of solitude. Waking up to complete stillness, where the only sound is the hum of your thoughts. Cooking for one and not having to cater to anyone else's preferences. Spending an entire day in pajamas just because. These aren't luxuries, they're the rhythm of a life lived for yourself, by yourself. Choosing to live alone isn't about pushing people away. It's about embracing the way you're wired. It's about recognizing that solitude isn't empty, it's full of potential. It's where you can stretch, breathe, and be unapologetically, wonderfully you. If that idea lights you up inside, then living alone might just be the ultimate act of self-care. Number 3, you struggle to compromise in relationships. Let's be real, living with someone, whether it's a partner, a friend, or even family, requires a fair amount of compromise. It's not all sunshine and roses, there are days when their quirks might drive you up the wall. Maybe it's the way they leave dishes in the sink, their preference for blasting music at ungodly hours, or even how they reorganize the kitchen every other week. Whatever it is, cohabitation is a dance, and it takes two people willing to adjust their rhythm for it to work. Now, if you're the kind of person who struggles to find that balance, who feels resentment bubbling up every time you have to budge just a little, you might need to take a step back and consider, is living alone the better option for you? Compromising doesn't mean you're losing or giving up something. It's about meeting halfway, which, for some, sounds easier than it feels. But when compromising becomes a constant tug-of-war, draining your energy or making you feel like you're bending over backward more than you'd like, it's a big clue. Maybe you've reached a point in life where you know what you want and aren't willing to sacrifice it for the sake of peace. And hey, that's okay. Recognizing that is a huge step. It's not selfish, it's self-awareness. Think about it, living alone means calling the shots. Want to binge watch your favorite show till 3 a.m.? Do it. Feel like rearranging the furniture on a whim? Go for it. You don't have to ask for anyone's opinion or worry about whether your choices will inconvenience someone else. That freedom can be incredibly liberating if you're someone who's grown tired of the constant give and take that shared living demands. For older adults, this becomes even more relevant. At this stage in life, you might feel you've done your share of compromising, raising kids, navigating long-term relationships, managing shared spaces with coworkers or extended family. You've lived it. Maybe now, you're craving a space where you're in full control, where every decision is yours to make without negotiation or debate. But let's not sugarcoat it, struggling to compromise doesn't necessarily mean you're difficult or set in your ways. Sometimes, it's just a matter of knowing yourself too well. You know what works for you and what doesn't. And that clarity? It's a gift. It's also a sign that living solo might be the best way to honor your needs and preferences. Of course, not compromising can also lead to friction if you try to force yourself into shared living situations. Why set yourself up for frustration? If you know you're happier when you don't have to constantly adjust for someone else, then living alone could be the kindest choice, not just for you, but for everyone involved. It allows you to thrive without resentment, to enjoy your space without compromise. And honestly, isn't that the dream? Number 4, you feel drained by social interactions. Let's talk about social interactions. You know, the ones that start off okay but somehow leave you feeling like your energy's been vacuumed out of you. It's not that you don't like people, maybe you even enjoy good conversation, the occasional laugh, or catching up on what's new. But there's a limit. And if you're honest with yourself, that limit is hit more often than not. There's a unique exhaustion that comes from constantly navigating other people's needs, moods, and quirks. You might find yourself stuck in small talk that feels like it's going nowhere, or tiptoeing around someone else's habits just to keep the peace. Even being around someone who doesn't bother you can feel like a lot. Why? Because their presence alone demands a certain level of energy you'd much rather save for yourself. And it's not just the direct interactions, either. It's the unspoken social expectations. That feeling that you should smile more, talk more, or do something you really don't feel like doing just because someone else is there. You catch yourself thinking, wouldn't it be nice if I could just be in my own bubble for a while? That bubble, by the way, doesn't have to mean isolation, it just means having control over when, how, and with whom you spend your time. When you live with other people, even in the best scenarios, your energy can get chipped away bit by bit. Maybe it's the constant hum of activity in the background when all you want is quiet. Or the way someone else's plans accidentally derail your perfectly peaceful day. It's not their fault, and it's not yours, it's just life when you're sharing space. But here's the thing, if you consistently feel more drained than fulfilled by being around others, it might be time to rethink how much social interaction you really need on a daily basis. As an older adult, this feeling can become even more pronounced. Maybe you've reached a point where you're not interested in playing host, roommate, or mediator anymore. You've done that. You've been there. And now, the idea of coming home to a place that's 100% yours, where you set the tone and pace, sounds like heaven. Living alone doesn't mean you're swearing off people forever. It means you're choosing to control the flow of energy in your life. You decide when to invite others into your world and when to keep that door closed for your own peace of mind. And honestly, that's not just okay, it's smart. If you've noticed that social interactions, even with the people you love, leave you feeling worn out instead of energized, pay attention to that. It's a sign that your natural rhythm thrives on solitude. And when you honor that need, you might find that you're happier, calmer, and far more in tune with yourself. Because, let's face it, nothing beats the kind of recharge you get when you're truly on your own. Number 5. You value complete control over your living space. Let's face it, some people are just born to be the rulers of their own little kingdom. If you're someone who lights up at the thought of having complete say over every single aspect of your home, living alone might be calling your name. It's not about being controlling, it's about creating a space that feels like a true reflection of you. When you live alone, your home becomes a direct extension of your personality. Every decision, big or small, is yours to make, and there's something wildly liberating about that. Think about it, no more debates over whether the couch goes here or there, or whether the walls should be painted in serene blues or bold reds. It's all up to you. If you want to rearrange your furniture on a whim or dedicate an entire room to your hobbies, you can. Want a plant in every corner? Go for it. Prefer a minimalist vibe with nothing but clean lines and open space? That's cool too. Living alone means you don't have to negotiate or compromise your vision. Then there's the practical side of things. The temperature? Exactly how you like it. The music? Your playlist, your volume, your mood. The kitchen? Stocked with the foods you love and organized in a way that makes sense to you. And hey, if you're the type who has a system for everything, be it organizing books by color or making sure your towels are folded just so, you never have to worry about someone disrupting your order. Your space, your rules. Now, let's talk about those little quirks we all have. Maybe you like your home spotless, with not a single thing out of place. Or maybe you're perfectly fine with a bit of organized chaos because, hey, you know where everything is. And that's what matters. Either way, living alone gives you the freedom to be as meticulous or as relaxed as you want. There's no judgment, no one looking over your shoulder, no one expecting you to do things their way. And it's not just about the physical space. It's about the atmosphere. Living alone means you control the vibe. Want to light candles and create a cozy retreat after a long day? Done. Prefer an energetic, lively environment with bright lights and music? That's your call too. Your home can change with your mood, and you don't have to explain or justify it to anyone. Ultimately, valuing complete control over your living space isn't about being inflexible or set in your ways. It's about understanding what makes you feel comfortable, inspired, and at peace. When your home is fully yours, it becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can unwind, recharge, and just be. If that idea makes your heart sing, then living alone might be the perfect fit for you. Number 6. You have difficulty maintaining boundaries in relationships. Let's face it, boundaries are hard. Drawing a line and sticking to it? That's a skill, and not everyone has it down. It can be even trickier when you're sharing your living space. Maybe you've noticed that your personal no often morphs into a hesitant yes when someone pushes just a little too hard. Or perhaps you feel obligated to always be available, to help, to listen, to fix things. If keeping your boundaries intact feels like a losing battle, living with others might not be your best setup. Living with someone, whether it's a roommate, family member, or partner, means constant negotiation. There's this unspoken expectation to accommodate their needs, even if it's at the expense of your own. Sometimes, you might even feel guilty for saying no or choosing yourself. But here's the thing, boundaries aren't selfish, they're essential. They protect your energy, your peace, your sanity. Without them, resentment creeps in, and tension builds like a pot on the stove about to boil over. When you live alone, though, that's where boundaries truly get to shine. There's no one to ask for just a little favor when you're in the middle of unwinding. No one to poke at your sacred quiet time or guilt you into plans you weren't feeling. Your space becomes exactly that, yours. The struggle with maintaining boundaries isn't always about the other person crossing them. Sometimes, it's about you. You might feel an overwhelming urge to people please, even when it costs you. Maybe you've noticed a pattern. You sacrifice your own comfort to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, or because it's just easier than explaining yourself. It might work in the short term, but in the long run, it chips away at your sense of self. When you're older, this becomes even more important. You've reached a stage in life where your time and energy are precious commodities. Why spend them feeling drained, frustrated, or cornered? If setting boundaries hasn't been your strong suit, living alone gives you the breathing room to strengthen that muscle. You get to decide who enters your world and on what terms. And let's be honest, boundaries in shared spaces can get murky fast. Think about it, one person's no big deal is another's pet peeve. You might feel fine about lending a hand here or there, but what happens when it becomes a pattern? Suddenly, you're the go-to person for everything, and the balance is way off. Living alone eliminates those blurred lines. It's your space, your rules, no explanations needed. So, if maintaining boundaries has always felt like an uphill climb, why not simplify things? Living alone means fewer battles, less guilt, and more room for what matters most, your well-being. It's not about shutting people out, it's about creating an environment where you can truly thrive, unapologetically. Number 7. You enjoy your hobbies and routines without interruptions. Let's get into it, your hobbies and routines. These are your little slices of joy, your pockets of peace, the things that make your day yours. Whether it's diving into a book, tinkering with something creative, or sticking to a morning ritual that sets the tone for your whole day, these are sacred. But you know what can ruin them faster than anything? Interruptions. Picture this, you're finally in the zone, doing something that lights you up, and bam, someone barges in with a question, a request, or just their own energy that shifts the vibe completely. It doesn't even have to be intentional. The mere presence of someone else can sometimes pull you out of your flow. And that flow, let's be honest, is what makes your hobbies and routines feel so good in the first place. It's that quiet, uninterrupted stretch of time where you get to fully be yourself, doing what you love without catering to anyone else's needs. If you've ever felt that pang of frustration when your groove gets broken, you're not alone. It's not about being antisocial or avoiding people, it's about cherishing the rhythm of your life. And when you live alone, you get to protect that rhythm like a treasure. No one's asking, "What's for dinner?" in the middle of your favorite show. No one's turning on the TV just as you're starting your meditation. It's just you, your space, and the freedom to lean fully into your passions and routines without compromise. And let's not forget how routines anchor us. They're not just habits, they're rituals. That morning coffee that you sip while gazing out the window? It's not just about caffeine, it's a moment of calm before the world wakes up. The evening walk you take every day. It's not just exercise, it's your chance to think, dream, or decompress. When you live alone, these routines become even more meaningful because they're uninterrupted, unhurried, and entirely yours. Now, when it comes to hobbies, the joy of living alone is that you can indulge them however you like. Feel like spreading out your art supplies across the entire dining table for days on end? Do it. Want to blast music and sing along while cooking your favorite recipe? Go for it. There's no one there to raise an eyebrow, suggest a better way, or accidentally interrupt your creative spark. It's your space, your rules. If you find that interruptions, no matter how small or well-meaning, start to grate on you, it's a sign. A sign that maybe your hobbies and routines are craving a space where they can thrive without interference. Living alone gives you that space. It's a chance to fully honor what you love, to give your days the structure and spontaneity that work for you, and to bask in the quiet joy of doing things your way, on your terms. And honestly, that's the kind of freedom that makes life feel a little more like yours. Number 8. You dislike sharing finances or resources. Let's get real for a second. Sharing finances or resources isn't for everyone. It's not about being stingy or selfish, it's about having control over what you've worked hard for and how you want to use it. Maybe you feel a little itch of frustration every time someone dips into the joint account for something you didn't agree on, or maybe you just like knowing that every penny is exactly where you think it should be. If the idea of financial independence makes you feel calm and steady, living alone could be your sweet spot. Think about the beauty of having complete autonomy over your money. You earn it, you save it, and you spend it on your terms. There's no debate over whether to splurge on a new gadget or put more into savings. Want to treat yourself to something luxurious? You don't have to justify it to anyone. Prefer to budget strictly and stick to your financial goals? You can do that without anyone urging you to loosen up. Your money, your rules. And honestly, that clarity feels pretty empowering. It's not just about the big stuff either. Little things add up, too. Utilities, groceries, subscriptions. When you're sharing these costs, there's always room for misunderstanding or resentment. Maybe someone uses more electricity than you or insists on buying pricey brands you'd never pick. Even deciding who pays for what can feel like an endless negotiation. Living alone eliminates that. You know exactly where every bill comes from, who's responsible, spoiler, it's you, and how much everything costs. There's a clean, straightforward simplicity to it. And let's not forget resources like space and stuff. Sharing can be tough when you're someone who values having ownership over your things. Maybe you don't like the idea of someone borrowing your favorite chair or leaving clutter in the one room you just cleaned. Or perhaps you're particular about how your groceries are stocked or how long the shower gets used. Living alone means you don't have to deal with those little annoyances that can snowball into big frustrations. Everything is yours, and it stays exactly the way you like it. It's not about being unwilling to compromise, it's about knowing when compromise just isn't worth the hassle. Some people are more comfortable when everything is in their control, and there's nothing wrong with that. You get to prioritize what matters to you, whether it's financial stability, personal comfort, or just peace of mind. At the end of the day, living alone offers a kind of freedom that can feel priceless. You don't have to worry about anyone else's spending habits, preferences, or quirks. Your home becomes a space where your resources work for you, not for anyone else. If the idea of never having to split a bill or share your favorite snack again feels like a dream come true, then living alone might just be the perfect setup for you. Number 9. You feel more productive and at peace when alone. Some people thrive in a bustling, social environment, while others, they come alive when the world quiets down, and it's just them and their thoughts. If you've ever felt that surge of clarity and calm when you're alone, no interruptions, no distractions, no one tapping on your mental shoulder, it's a good sign that living alone might be your ideal setup. There's something magical about solitude. It's like a mental reset button. When it's just you, there's no need to filter your energy, no pressure to adjust to someone else's mood or schedule. You get to focus entirely on what matters most to you, whether that's working on a project, diving into a hobby, or simply enjoying a moment of stillness. That kind of freedom? It's priceless. Now, let's talk productivity. You've probably noticed that shared living can come with a constant hum of activity, TVs blaring, conversations drifting in from another room, someone asking if you've seen the scissors again. It's not always chaos, but even small interruptions can pull you out of your zone. When you're alone, though, you set the rhythm. Need complete silence? Done. Prefer a little background music? Go for it. Want to tackle your to-do list at 2 a.m. in your pajamas? No one's there to question you. Peace is another thing entirely. Living alone means creating a space that feels like an extension of you, your energy, your vibe, your sanctuary. There's no negotiation over where the furniture goes, no arguments about whose turn it is to take out the trash. You can decorate however you want, leave things exactly where you like them, and build routines that flow naturally. It's your home, and it operates on your terms. But let's not forget the emotional side of this. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely, it means having the time to connect with yourself. In shared spaces, there's often an unspoken expectation to engage. Even if it's just casual small talk or hanging out in the same room, it takes a little piece of your energy. When you're alone, you don't have to put on any masks or play any roles. You can just be. As an older adult, this kind of peace and productivity might feel more important than ever. You've spent years navigating relationships, careers, and responsibilities. Now, you might find that being alone is when you feel most like yourself. And that's a beautiful thing. So, if you find yourself getting lost in the bliss of your own company, if you feel sharper, calmer, and more centered when you're on your own, it's worth considering whether living alone is the right path. It's not about shutting the world out. It's about creating a space where you can flourish, recharge, and truly embrace the life you want. Number 10. You find it challenging to adapt to others' habits or quirks. Let's be honest, sharing space with other people means sharing everything. Their habits, their quirks, their rhythms. And if you're reading this, chances are, you've started to notice that adapting to those things doesn't come as easily as it used to, or maybe it never did. Either way, it's not a bad thing. It just means you might be better suited for a setup where the only habits you have to deal with are your own. Living with others is a constant dance of compromise. Maybe they're an early riser who clatters around the kitchen at dawn while you're savoring those last precious minutes of sleep. Or maybe they leave cabinets open, hum while brushing their teeth, or, ugh, the dreaded loud chewer. Whatever it is, the little things that other people do, even if they're harmless, can start to feel not so harmless when they interrupt your flow. The thing about quirks is that they're rarely one-off events. They're recurring. And no matter how much you love someone, even the most endearing quirks can start to chip away at your patience. It's not that you're difficult or hard to please, it's just that, over time, these constant adjustments to accommodate someone else's way of being can wear you out. It's like trying to fit your perfectly shaped puzzle piece into a spot where it doesn't quite belong. And then there's the flip side, your own habits. You've got your ways, your routines, your preferences, and maybe you're not interested in toning them down or tweaking them to avoid annoying someone else. You shouldn't have to feel guilty for the way you live in your own home. Maybe you like to watch TV with the volume a little too high or eat dinner at weird hours. Or maybe you're someone who needs everything just so clean, quiet, organized. Living with others can feel like a constant negotiation, and frankly, you might be done negotiating. When you live alone, all that tension vanishes. There's no debate over whether the thermostat is too high or who left the lights on. There's no passive-aggressive battle over whose turn it is to do the dishes. Your space becomes a reflection of you, your preferences, your style, your quirks. You can exist exactly as you are, no adjustments necessary. And here's the thing, recognizing that you find it hard to adapt to others' habits isn't a flaw. It's self-awareness. It's knowing that you thrive when you don't have to constantly navigate someone else's rhythms. Living alone isn't about escaping other people, it's about creating a life that feels peaceful and manageable for you. If adapting to someone else's quirks feels more like a chore than a challenge you're willing to take on, it's a sign. A big one. Because at the end of the day, life is too short to spend it walking on eggshells, or tripping over someone else's. Number 11, you have unresolved conflicts with close family members. Let's talk about family, wonderful, complicated, and, let's be honest, sometimes downright exhausting. If you've got unresolved conflicts with close family members, living alone might feel like the reset button you didn't even know you needed. When emotions run high and tensions are bubbling just beneath the surface, sharing a living space can feel like walking through a minefield. Every glance, every comment, every little interaction becomes a potential spark for something bigger. And who wants to live like that? Here's the thing, unresolved issues have a way of sneaking into every corner of your life when you're around the people involved. You might start second-guessing yourself, tiptoeing around certain topics, or feeling like you're stuck in an endless cycle of emotional push and pull. It's draining. And when you're older, your peace of mind becomes so much more valuable. Living alone gives you the chance to step away from all that noise, to create a space where you're not constantly reminded of what's unsettled. This isn't about running away from problems. It's about giving yourself room to breathe. Sometimes, distance can be the healthiest choice, especially when conflicts feel too tangled to resolve easily. You need time to think, to process, and maybe even to heal. Sharing a home with someone you're at odds with can make that nearly impossible. Every day becomes a balancing act of avoidance or confrontation, and honestly, who has the energy for that? When you live alone, you get to set the tone for your days. Your space becomes your sanctuary, free of tension, awkward silences, or passive-aggressive energy. You can focus on what makes you happy without feeling like you're constantly navigating someone else's moods or expectations. It's a chance to reclaim your emotional well-being, to surround yourself with calm instead of chaos. And let's not ignore the practical side of things. Conflict can make even the simplest shared tasks feel unbearable. Whether it's deciding who pays for what, how to handle household chores, or even just who gets the last cup of coffee, unresolved issues can turn everyday moments into battles. When you live alone, there's no one to argue with over the thermostat, the TV remote, or the grocery list. It's just you, your choices, and a whole lot less stress. Choosing to live alone doesn't mean you're giving up on your relationships. In fact, it might help them. Sometimes, stepping back and creating boundaries is exactly what's needed to rebuild those connections in a healthier way. It's hard to work through conflicts when you're constantly bumping into each other, physically and emotionally. Space can provide clarity, giving both you and your family time to reflect and reset. If the idea of waking up without a knot in your stomach or ending the day without a heavy sigh of frustration sounds appealing, then maybe it's time to consider your own place. Living alone isn't about isolation, it's about protecting your peace and finding your balance. And who knows? That space could be the first step toward healing those relationships on your own terms. Number 12. You've experienced repeated patterns of toxic relationships. Let's talk about patterns. Sometimes, life has a way of nudging us into the same situations over and over until we finally stop and ask ourselves, why does this keep happening? Toxic relationships, in particular, can be like a broken record, familiar, draining, and tough to escape. If you've noticed a cycle where conflict, control, or emotional strain seem to follow you, it might be time to consider a reset. And that reset? It could look like living alone. When you're tangled up in unhealthy dynamics, even subtly toxic ones, it's hard to see the bigger picture. The constant give and take, and let's be real, it's usually more take, can leave you feeling exhausted, unbalanced, and unsure of your own boundaries. Maybe you've tried fixing things or setting limits, but the same patterns creep back in. It's not always easy to untangle yourself from those relationships, but stepping into your own space? That's one way to break free. Living alone offers something that's often missing in toxic environments: clarity. It's like stepping out of a storm into still air. No arguments about who's right or wrong. No guilt tripping. No second guessing every word you say or every decision you make. You're free to create an environment where your voice, your needs, and your well-being take center stage. Here's the thing about toxic relationships: they don't just hurt in the moment. They leave behind echoes. Maybe you start questioning your own worth or doubting your instincts. Or maybe you've gotten so used to putting others first that you don't even remember what it feels like to prioritize yourself. Living alone can be the antidote to that. It gives you space to heal, to reconnect with who you are when you're not bending to someone else's expectations. And let's not forget the peace that comes with it. Toxic relationships thrive on drama, big or small. It might be constant tension or little passive-aggressive digs, but either way, it's noise that chips away at your sense of calm. Living solo? It's like hitting the mute button. You decide what energy enters your space, and you can finally exhale without waiting for the next storm to roll in. Of course, this isn't about blaming yourself for the patterns you've experienced. Sometimes, life just hands us difficult relationships, and we learn as we go. But if those patterns keep repeating, maybe the lesson is this: you deserve better. You deserve a space that feels safe, uplifting, and entirely your own. Living alone doesn't mean shutting yourself off from the world or giving up on relationships. It means stepping back to protect your peace, rediscover your inner strength, and build a life that reflects what you truly want. If repeated toxic patterns have been weighing you down, consider this your sign to break the cycle. Alone doesn't mean lonely, it can mean free, empowered, and whole. Number 13. You value independence over emotional support. Let's talk about independence. It's not just about doing things on your own, it's about feeling in control of your life, your space, and your decisions. If you're someone who values independence more than the constant emotional support that can come with living with others, it's a sign. A big one. Living alone might just be your perfect match. Some people crave the companionship that comes with sharing a home. They thrive on knowing someone's always there to talk, to share the ups and downs, to simply be. And that's great for them. But if you're not wired that way, you might find that constant presence a little smothering. It's not that you don't care about others or don't appreciate connection. It's just that you'd rather call the shots without having to factor in someone else's emotional needs 24/7. Maybe you've reached a point in your life where you don't need someone to be there for every emotional high and low. You've learned to navigate those waters yourself, and honestly, you prefer it that way. There's a unique kind of strength in knowing you can face challenges solo, without leaning too much on anyone else. You've built that resilience, and you're proud of it. Living alone amplifies that independence. You get to handle things your way, on your timeline, without anyone looking over your shoulder or trying to help when you didn't ask for it. Now, let's flip this around for a second. Living with others often means sharing your emotional bandwidth, too. It's not just about them supporting you, it's about you supporting them. Sometimes it's subtle, a listening ear, a comforting word. Other times, it's more intense. And while that can be rewarding, it can also be draining, especially if you're someone who values your independence more than the give and take of constant emotional connection. When you live alone, you're free to choose when and how you engage with others emotionally. You can have deep conversations with friends, spend time with family, or connect in ways that feel meaningful, without it being an everyday obligation. You get to save your emotional energy for the moments that truly matter, instead of feeling like you're always on call. And independence isn't just about emotional space, it's about practical freedom, too. Living alone means you don't have to justify your decisions, big or small. Want to rearrange the furniture at 2 a.m.? Go for it. Feel like spending an entire weekend in your pajamas without talking to a single soul? Who's stopping you? Your life, your rules. There's something undeniably liberating about that. If you're the kind of person who thrives on self-reliance, who feels more at peace when you don't have to balance someone else's emotions with your own, living alone is more than just an option, it's a lifestyle that fits you. It's not about shutting people out, it's about creating a life where you get to show up for yourself first, in the ways that matter most. Number 14, you're unwilling to compromise on lifestyle preferences, like sleep or diet. Some people just know what works for them, and honestly, there's no shame in that. If you've dialed in your perfect routine and aren't keen on anyone else disrupting it, living alone might be the best way to keep your sanity intact. Whether it's your sleep schedule, eating habits, or daily rituals, these aren't just preferences for you, they're non-negotiables. And sharing a home with someone who doesn't align with your vibe? That can feel like trying to solve a puzzle with pieces that just don't fit. Let's start with sleep. Maybe you're the type who needs total silence and a pitch-black room to catch some solid Z's. Or maybe you're a night owl who thrives in the quiet hours when everyone else is asleep. Whatever your rhythm, living alone gives you the power to stick to it. No compromising because someone else is a light sleeper or insists on blasting their favorite show at midnight. No tiptoeing around in the morning because they're still snoozing. It's just you, your schedule, and a blissfully undisturbed night's rest, or early morning burst of energy. Then there's food. Your diet isn't just about what's on your plate, it's a part of how you live. Whether you've got specific nutritional goals, dietary restrictions, or just quirky preferences, sharing a kitchen with someone who doesn't get it can quickly become frustrating. Living alone means the fridge is stocked with exactly what you need. No mystery leftovers, no missing snacks, no debates over dinner plans. You can eat what you want, when you want, and how you want, without anyone commenting or complaining. But it's not just about food and sleep, it's about the whole lifestyle package. Maybe you like things a certain way, from the lighting in your living room to the way your towels are folded. Perhaps you thrive on a structured routine, or maybe you're someone who craves spontaneity and hates being tied down by someone else's schedule. Sharing a home means constant compromises, and for some people, that just doesn't feel worth it. Why spend your days negotiating over things that don't feel negotiable to you? Living alone doesn't mean you're rigid or difficult, it means you know yourself. You've spent years figuring out what works and what doesn't, and you're not interested in bending those hard-earned rules for the sake of convenience. And let's be real, There's a unique kind of peace in knowing your space will always reflect exactly who you are. No shared clutter, no competing priorities, just a home that's unapologetically yours. At the end of the day, being unwilling to compromise isn't about being selfish. It's about honoring your needs and understanding what helps you thrive. Living alone gives you the freedom to do that without guilt or tension. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, "I just wish I could do things my way," then maybe it's time to make that wish a reality. Your home, your rules, simple as that. Number 15. You don't feel the need for constant emotional connection or validation. Not everyone craves constant connection. Some people just feel at ease in their own company, thriving without the steady drip of validation from others. If that sounds like you, it might be a sign that living alone is your ideal setup. Think about it. When you don't need someone else to cheer you on or validate your choices, you free yourself from a whole lot of noise. You don't need reassurance about what you're doing, what you're wearing, or how you're living your life. You trust yourself. And that kind of self-assured independence can make shared living feel, well, unnecessary. Why share your space if you're not relying on someone else to fill an emotional gap? Living with others often comes with an unspoken expectation to engage. To check in, ask how their day went, listen when they vent, and share your own thoughts and feelings in return. For some, this emotional exchange is fulfilling, energizing, even. But for you, it might feel like an obligation rather than a genuine desire. And there's no shame in that. Knowing that you're perfectly content without constant emotional back and forth is a kind of clarity that many people never reach. Here's the thing, when you live alone, there's no pressure to show up emotionally for someone else every day. You're not expected to validate their struggles, navigate their moods, or keep up with the endless little interactions that come with sharing a home. Instead, you get to pour all of that energy back into yourself, your passions, your projects, your peace. And it's not about being cold or shutting others out. You probably still value meaningful relationships, but on your terms. You enjoy connecting when it feels right, not because you're tethered to someone else's needs or schedule. That flexibility is one of the biggest perks of living alone. You get to control when and how you engage with the world, all while maintaining the emotional space you cherish. Validation is another story entirely. If you've reached a point in life where you don't feel the need for someone else's stamp of approval, you're already ahead of the game. You know who you are, what you like, and what makes you happy, and you're not looking for anyone to confirm it for you. Living alone lets you honor that independence without compromise. You can decorate how you want, make decisions without second-guessing, and live fully in line with your own preferences. As an older adult, this kind of autonomy might feel especially liberating. You've likely spent years balancing emotional dynamics, caring for others, managing relationships, meeting expectations. Living alone is your chance to step into a space where your emotional energy is 100% yours to spend, save, or recharge however you see fit. So, if you don't need constant emotional connection or validation, why not lean into it? Living alone could be the ultimate expression of your independence and confidence. It's not about isolation, it's about living in a way that truly suits your soul. Living alone in old age can lead to some surprising changes. In this video, we're sharing 12 things that living solo will make you do, things that could completely shift your mindset and lifestyle. Stick around until the end for a powerful realization that will make you rethink how you approach independence. Number 1. Stay physically active to maintain health. As we get older, staying physically active becomes more important than ever. But when you're living alone, it's easy to let that slide. After all, there's no one around to push you out the door for a walk or remind you to stretch. Yet, keeping your body moving is one of the most effective ways to maintain health and independence as you age. When you're living solo, the responsibility of staying active falls squarely on your shoulders. You can't rely on anyone else to get you moving. But that doesn't mean you're on your own. The key is to build movement into your day in a way that feels natural, not forced. Start by finding something that you genuinely enjoy. Whether it's gardening, dancing in your living room, or a morning yoga session, it's easier to stick with something you look forward to. But here's the thing, it doesn't always have to be a big workout session. In fact, it shouldn't always be. Small bursts of activity, scattered throughout your day, can make a huge difference. Maybe it's doing a few stretches while watching your favorite show or walking around the house as you wait for your coffee to brew. You'd be amazed at how these little moments add up over time, turning into a steady rhythm that helps keep your body in check. Physical activity doesn't just help your body stay strong, it also supports your mind. The older we get, the more we realize how closely our physical health and mental health are linked. Staying active can boost your mood, improve your sleep, and even sharpen your memory. It's almost like a natural antidepressant, without the side effects. Plus, when you live alone, staying physically active can help combat feelings of loneliness or isolation. It gives you a purpose, something to focus on beyond just getting through the day. There's also the matter of preserving your independence. As we age, there's a natural decline in strength, flexibility, and balance. But these changes don't have to be a given. Regular exercise can slow down the aging process, helping you maintain mobility, flexibility, and strength well into your later years. This means you can keep doing the things you love and don't have to depend on others for help with everyday tasks. And let's be honest, who wants to give up their independence? It's one of the best parts of living alone. Don't worry about being perfect, either. It's easy to get caught up in thinking you need to do everything right, but really, it's about consistency. You don't need to train for a marathon or become a fitness guru. Just aim to keep moving, and do it in a way that fits into your life. Whether it's a few minutes of stretching or taking the stairs instead of the elevator, it all counts. What matters most is making physical activity a regular part of your life. And the more you move, the easier it becomes. In the end, staying physically active isn't just about looking good or fitting into a specific image of health, it's about feeling good, staying strong, and taking control of your future. Living alone gives you the freedom to design your day, and making time for movement is one of the best ways to use that freedom wisely. Number 2, experience heightened sensitivity to being forgotten by loved ones. As we get older and live alone, something strange starts to happen. We become acutely aware of being forgotten by those we care about. It's not that people set out to ignore us, but there's this slow, creeping sense that we're slipping from the forefront of their minds. Maybe it's the busy lives everyone's living, or maybe it's because we start to fade into the background of their daily routines. Either way, the feeling of being forgotten becomes a silent companion, one we can't shake off. It's subtle, almost invisible, yet sharp enough to sting when we notice it. There's a kind of vulnerability that comes with living on your own in old age. You might find yourself staring at your phone, hoping for a call or a message. You check your inbox and realize that days have passed without a single ping from a friend or family member. You start to wonder, is everyone just too busy? Did I do something wrong? Are they still thinking about me? The anxiety can spiral, with thoughts of being forgotten haunting you more than you'd expect. And here's the thing, this sensitivity doesn't always come from a place of wanting attention or sympathy. It's not about feeling entitled to be the center of anyone's world. It's more like the quiet acknowledgement that, in the rush of life, we can become an afterthought. People get wrapped up in their own stories, their own obligations, and gradually, they might forget to check in. Or maybe we don't see them as often, and the distance grows wider. Time, it seems, has a way of gently erasing connections. Not out of malice, but because the clock keeps ticking, and everyone has their own journey to follow. Living alone amplifies this experience. It's easy to brush it off when you're surrounded by people, But when there's no one to share the space with, every moment of silence feels more intense. The occasional lapse in communication feels like an echo in an empty room. Sometimes, you might even convince yourself that maybe you're just too much of a burden to others. Maybe they don't have time for you. The absence of a message, a visit, or a call takes on a weight of its own. But there's also a part of us that feels embarrassed by these emotions. Who wants to admit that they're struggling with the fear of being forgotten? It's a quiet sadness, one that doesn't often get spoken about. It's easy to put on a brave face and act like it doesn't bother us. But, deep down, we all want to be seen. We want to know that we matter, that we haven't been left behind. The feeling of being forgotten doesn't just make us question our relationships, it makes us question our place in the world. And so, we begin to crave the smallest gestures, the unexpected phone call, the friendly text, the simple check-in. It's not about grand gestures. It's about making sure we're still seen, still remembered, still part of the lives we've worked so hard to build. In old age, living alone, it's those little reminders that we're not invisible that can make all the difference. Number 3, prioritize personal safety measures. When you're living alone, especially as you age, prioritizing personal safety becomes an unspoken necessity. It's not just about having the right locks on doors or remembering to turn off the stove. It's about creating a space where you feel secure, confident, and comfortable, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Over time, you start to realize that safety isn't just a set of precautions, it's a lifestyle. One of the first things you'll probably notice is how much more aware you become of your surroundings. When there's no one else around to help out or notice the little things, you learn to be hypervigilant. Things like keeping the lights on in the hallway or making sure your phone is charged aren't just habits, they're safeguards. Suddenly, every tiny detail feels more important because, well, there's no one to call out for if something goes wrong. You'll likely become a little more methodical about your environment, too. Maybe you'll start rearranging furniture so it's easier to navigate without tripping, or you'll put those extra handrails in places you didn't think were necessary before. It's not paranoia, it's just common sense. The more you think about how easily accidents could happen, the more you want to avoid them. Things that seemed trivial in the past, like organizing your kitchen or bathroom, become important tasks. A clutter-free, organized space not only feels better, but it reduces the risk of slips, trips, and falls. And then there's technology. As we get older, tech isn't just for convenience, it's often for safety. From smart home devices to security cameras, technology gives us the tools to feel more in control. But it's not just about setting up gadgets for show, it's about using them wisely. You might find yourself getting better at using emergency alerts on your phone or even wearing a personal alarm that can be triggered if you fall or need assistance. It might feel a bit overboard at first, but trust me, it provides peace of mind that nothing else can. One of the more unexpected aspects of living alone in old age is how much you start relying on routine. You might not have a partner or roommate to keep track of things for you, but you start setting up your life in a way that minimizes risks and maximizes safety. Maybe you always keep your favorite snacks in the same place, or you always have your keys in a specific pocket. These little routines add up to a big sense of stability. You become so used to doing things in a certain order that you almost don't have to think about it. This isn't just a habit, it's a way to ensure that you stay on top of things without overloading yourself. Living alone means that your safety is ultimately your responsibility, and while it can feel like a heavy burden at times, it's also empowering. It forces you to become proactive, to be more mindful of your actions, and to embrace the things you can control in a world where so much is unpredictable. It's about taking charge of your surroundings and making intentional choices to safeguard your well-being. And when you do that, it's not just about staying safe, it's about feeling free and secure in your own space. Number 4, celebrate small victories or events alone. When you're living alone, There's no one around to throw you a party every time you hit a milestone, big or small. But here's the thing, celebrating those little victories is still so important. In fact, it might be even more crucial when you're flying solo. It's easy to overlook how vital it is to acknowledge your achievements when there's no one else to cheer you on, but doing so can have a surprisingly powerful effect on your well-being. Celebrating on your own doesn't mean throwing a lavish celebration every time you manage to finish a puzzle or complete a task. It's about recognizing and appreciating the small moments that make up your day, your week, and your life. Maybe it's something as simple as enjoying a cup of tea after a productive morning or taking a moment to smile after accomplishing a task that felt daunting at first. When you live alone, the practice of celebrating these victories, no matter how small, can become an act of self-love and recognition. It's so easy to get caught up in the hustle of life, especially as we get older. The world moves fast, and sometimes it feels like we're just pushing through one thing to get to the next. But taking the time to celebrate can be a grounding force, reminding us that we've earned the right to feel proud, even if nobody else is there to clap. In fact, learning to celebrate yourself is one of the most empowering things you can do. Living alone gives you the freedom to choose how you celebrate. It doesn't need to be flashy, and it certainly doesn't need to be shared with anyone else. It's about what makes you feel good. Maybe you treat yourself to a quiet evening with your favorite book, or perhaps you spend a little extra time on a hobby that brings you joy. Celebrating on your own means embracing the idea that your successes are worthy of attention, even if that attention is coming from you and you alone. And, honestly, when you live alone, there's a kind of freedom in celebrating without the pressure of other people's expectations. No need for big, over-the-top celebrations or comparisons. It's all about you and your own journey. Maybe you danced around the living room after finishing a tough project, or you took a victory lap after crossing a long-term goal off your list. These personal moments are just as meaningful, if not more so, than any external recognition. The beauty is that you're building your own narrative, where you're both the hero and the one who gets to give out the rewards. It also becomes a way to stay connected to yourself. In a world where so much of our lives is dictated by the people around us, family, friends, co-workers, living alone encourages you to cultivate your own sense of self-worth. Celebrating those little wins reminds you that, regardless of your circumstances, you are enough. It's a gentle reminder that your own efforts are valuable and worthy of acknowledgement. These celebrations, while small, add up to create a stronger, more resilient sense of self. And let's not forget how this practice can boost your mood. Taking time to acknowledge your accomplishments can release those feel-good hormones, making you feel more energized and positive. It's like a little shot of happiness that can help you get through the next challenge. Over time, celebrating yourself helps build a healthy mindset, one that values progress and perseverance rather than waiting for others to validate your journey. In the end, celebrating small victories when you're living alone is more than just a nice gesture, it's a way to honor your own growth. So, don't be afraid to give yourself a high five, even if it's just you in the room. You've earned it. Number 5. Form deep connections with neighbors for companionship. When you live alone in your later years, something subtle shifts in your perception of those around you. You begin to look at your neighbors in a way that might not have occurred to you before. What were once simple, fleeting exchanges, a smile in the hallway, a quick nod when you pass each other on the street, start to mean a lot more. The idea of forming deeper connections with neighbors, for companionship, becomes a quiet necessity. It's not that you're seeking a new family, but the need for human interaction, for someone who sees you and cares, grows stronger. Living alone can feel isolating, and over time, that sense of solitude can begin to gnaw at you. You realize that the occasional chat with someone next door can break the monotony. It might not be a deep, soul-bearing conversation, but it's the little moments that start to matter, the quick hello when you're both out taking out the trash, or a shared laugh over something trivial. It's these small exchanges that gradually build into something more meaningful. There's a certain comfort in knowing that someone, even if they're just a few doors down, is there. And that's exactly what you start to crave. The truth is, as we get older, we're more aware of how fleeting time can be, and it makes the connections we have with others feel all the more precious. Neighbors, by sheer proximity, become the people you can rely on in a way that friends and family, who may be far away, can't always provide. They're the ones who notice when you're not out on your porch for a few days, or when you're struggling to carry a grocery bag up the stairs. These small gestures of attentiveness form a bond that might not be immediate but, over time, becomes rooted in shared moments of human warmth. It's not just about convenience, it's about forging genuine companionship. When you live alone, you start to appreciate the simple act of someone checking in on you. Sometimes, it's not even about needing something specific, it's just about knowing that someone is there, that you matter in their world. These relationships can be unexpectedly fulfilling, often growing in ways that surprise you. A cup of tea shared, a favorite book recommended, or a walk to the local park together might not seem like much, but they are threads that weave a comforting fabric of connection. And here's the thing, living alone doesn't have to mean feeling alone. Neighbors, who once may have been strangers, gradually become the people you look forward to seeing. There's a certain magic that happens when you allow yourself to be open to the possibilities around you. You begin to realize that there's something special about the bonds you create in your immediate environment. Maybe it's because you know each other's routines, or maybe it's because the shared experience of living near one another creates a unique, unspoken understanding. Over time, these relationships become the ones you depend on for the small joys of daily life. Whether it's borrowing a cup of sugar or simply having someone to chat with when the day feels too quiet, these connections start to fill the spaces left by loneliness. It's in these interactions that you find a sense of belonging, and that, in itself, is priceless. So, while the world may seem vast, and your circle may feel smaller, the connections you form with those closest to you, your neighbors, become more meaningful than ever before. Number 6. Manage finances meticulously. Living alone as you get older brings with it a strong sense of independence, but it also means that managing your finances takes on a whole new level of importance. There's no one around to help juggle bills or make last-minute decisions about spending. It all falls squarely on your shoulders, and that's when you realize just how crucial it is to stay on top of your finances, no matter how much it might feel like a mountain at times. First off, budgeting becomes less of a nice-to-have and more of a must-have when you're living alone. Without anyone else to share expenses or handle the unexpected costs, you quickly learn that every penny counts. So, you get methodical, almost to a fine art. You'll find yourself tracking every expense, big or small, to ensure nothing slips through the cracks. It might start with setting up a simple spreadsheet or using an app that helps you visualize where your money is going. Pretty soon, you're instinctively knowing how much you have left in the month and adjusting your plans accordingly. But it's not just about keeping track of the small stuff. Living alone can make you realize just how important it is to plan for the future. You might not have anyone to fall back on if something goes wrong, so you begin putting more thought into things like saving for emergencies or retirement. The reality of being solely responsible for your financial well-being can be sobering, but it also drives you to take action. You become less likely to splurge on unnecessary things because you know every dollar saved could be the cushion you need in a tight spot. One thing you might also notice is how much more you focus on your long-term goals. When you're not constantly distracted by the needs of others or the demands of a shared household, you have the mental space to focus on bigger financial ambitions. Maybe you decide to invest more seriously or start exploring new income streams. Or perhaps you get more intentional about paying off debt, knowing that being debt-free in your later years could be a game changer for your peace of mind. Of course, there's always that balancing act between being frugal and enjoying life. Living alone doesn't mean you need to sacrifice every joy, far from it. You get better at prioritizing your spending, learning to splurge on the things that truly matter while cutting back on things that don't bring you lasting happiness. That coffee shop latte? Maybe not so often. That weekend getaway? You bet you'll make room for it. It's all about finding that sweet spot where your financial stability and enjoyment of life meet. And then there's the paperwork. If there's one thing you really come to terms with while managing your finances solo, it's how much more responsibility you bear when it comes to staying organized. Tax forms, bills, insurance policies, they all pile up, and it's on you to keep track of them. What seemed like a chore in earlier years becomes part of the rhythm of life. And over time, you start to develop a system for staying organized that works just for you. Whether it's digitizing your documents or setting up a filing system that's easy to navigate, you get it done, because you know that managing your finances meticulously is non-negotiable. In the end, managing your finances when living alone becomes a kind of self-care. It's about more than just keeping your bank account in the black, it's about feeling empowered. You know where you stand, and you know you've got the skills to weather whatever comes your way. The confidence you gain from mastering your financial life spills over into every other part of living alone. It's a reminder that you've got this. Number 7, seek hobbies to combat loneliness. When you're living alone, there's a quiet kind of loneliness that can sneak in, even on the days when everything is going well. The silence can feel a little heavier, and you might find yourself wishing for something to fill the space. This is where hobbies come in, not just as a way to pass the time, but as a powerful tool to combat that sense of isolation. They give you something to focus on, something to look forward to, and often, something to get lost in. The beauty of hobbies is that they can be anything you want them to be. Maybe you've always had an interest in painting, or perhaps you've been meaning to try your hand at gardening, but you've never gotten around to it. When you live alone, you have the freedom to explore whatever piques your curiosity without worrying about what anyone else thinks. That freedom can be liberating, especially as you get older and the pressures of life begin to slow down a bit. Engaging in a hobby not only helps keep your mind occupied, but it also provides a sense of purpose. When you're creating, building, or learning something new, it shifts your attention away from feelings of loneliness and towards something more positive. A hobby becomes a quiet companion that demands your focus, and in doing so, it helps you rediscover the joy of simply being present. It's a subtle reminder that there's always something more to explore, something more to learn. And here's the thing, hobbies don't just fill time, they can also help you build a deeper connection with yourself. When you're living alone, it's easy to get caught up in your own head, but a hobby gives you an outlet. Whether it's knitting, photography, or even learning how to cook a new recipe, hobbies create moments of achievement and self-expression. You start to realize that, even in solitude, you're capable of doing something meaningful, something that brings you joy, even if no one else is around to witness it. As you dive into a hobby, you might even find it sparks connections with others, too. While you might not have people physically nearby, the online world is full of communities where like-minded individuals come together to share their interests. Whether it's through forums, social media groups, or virtual classes, hobbies can help you feel part of a larger community, even if it's just through shared passion. The isolation starts to feel less pronounced when you know there are others out there who enjoy the same things you do. What's more, hobbies have this amazing ability to slow time down. As you get absorbed in something you love, whether it's assembling a jigsaw puzzle or composing a piece of music, you begin to lose track of time. The loneliness that might have seemed overwhelming at first fades into the background. You're no longer counting the hours in silence, you're wrapped up in the present moment, engaged and content. Hobbies allow you to create your own rhythm, giving structure and fulfillment to your day. In the long run, finding a hobby isn't just about filling the silence. It's about giving yourself something to hold on to, a thread of joy that runs through the everyday. It's about creating a space where you're free to express yourself, grow, and, Most importantly, remind yourself that you're not alone in this. There's always something out there waiting for you to discover, and your next great hobby could be the very thing that turns your solitude into a journey of self-exploration. Number 8. Organize medical and emergency contacts. When you live alone in your later years, there's a shift that happens in how you approach the day-to-day, particularly when it comes to your health and safety. You begin to realize just how important it is to have a plan in place. It's not something you necessarily want to think about, but the reality sets in that organizing your medical and emergency contacts is no longer optional, it's essential. There's a strange kind of peace that comes with having your contacts and critical health information organized. Maybe it's the security of knowing exactly who to call if something goes wrong, or the comfort of having your medical history neatly laid out, ready to share if an emergency arises. It's less about anticipating disaster and more about taking charge of your own well-being. The truth is, as we get older, being proactive in these matters feels less like a chore and more like a form of self-care. It's a way to ensure that, should something happen, you aren't scrambling to figure out what to do next. You'll start by creating a list of doctors, specialists, and emergency contacts, those people you can rely on if things take an unexpected turn. It's not just about jotting down names and phone numbers. It's about being strategic. Maybe you have a favorite neighbor who can step in for a quick phone call when you're unable to reach someone. Or perhaps you have a close friend who's always a text away in case you need someone to help navigate the healthcare system. These are the people who form your safety net, and having them clearly listed makes it easier for you to stay in control of your health, no matter what comes your way. Then, there's the medical information itself. Your list of medications, past surgeries, allergies, and conditions. Having all of this in one place is a game changer. It's not just for your peace of mind, but for anyone who might need to step in and help. If an ambulance has to be called, or if you're unable to advocate for yourself in a medical situation, having a folder or digital file with all your crucial details could make all the difference. No one wants to think about needing help, but knowing that your information is organized and accessible can make you feel more at ease. But organizing your medical and emergency contacts doesn't just stop with the basics. It's also about being prepared for unexpected situations. Maybe you keep an extra set of house keys with a trusted neighbor in case of an emergency. Or perhaps you've shared your medical list with a close friend who can step in if needed. It's the little things that make a big difference. You never know when you might need help, but knowing that it's just a phone call away brings a certain calm. In the end, organizing your medical and emergency contacts isn't about expecting something bad to happen, it's about taking control. It's about making sure that no matter what happens, you've set yourself up with the right resources. It's a simple act of care, a small but significant gesture that says, "I've got this." And maybe, in the process, you find that organizing these things isn't just about preparing for emergencies, it's about reclaiming your autonomy and ensuring you're as independent as possible, no matter what life throws your way. Number 9. Invent imaginary scenarios or role play to entertain oneself. When you're living alone, especially as you get older, there's a certain freedom that comes with it. But that freedom can sometimes feel a little quiet. And in those moments, when the silence of an empty house stretches out a little longer than you expected, you might find yourself slipping into something unexpected, creating your own little world. You start to invent imaginary scenarios, role-play different situations, and, honestly, you begin to entertain yourself in ways you never thought you would. At first, it might feel a little strange. Maybe you start out just talking to yourself in your head, narrating the day, or pretending you're in some big, dramatic movie scene as you go about making breakfast. But soon enough, you realize something: it's kind of fun. Maybe it's a way to break the monotony or add some color to the otherwise routine activities of the day, but your imagination takes over, and suddenly, you're living out all kinds of possibilities. There's something deeply satisfying about creating whole scenarios in your mind, even if they're entirely fictional. One moment, You might be playing the role of a famous explorer discovering new lands in the backyard. The next, you're imagining yourself in a thrilling mystery, piecing together clues from around the house. You could even turn your daily chores into an epic quest. Washing dishes? It's a battle against time before the clock strikes midnight, and only you can finish in time. Folding laundry? Well, that's a mission in stealth as you sneak around obstacles like a secret agent. You begin to see your home in a new light. Each corner becomes a potential setting for the next big adventure. These imagined scenarios, however silly they might seem, aren't just about passing the time. They offer a way to stay engaged, to keep your mind active, and to inject a little joy into the mundane. Living alone creates a space where you can be whoever you want, whenever you want. There's no one to judge, no one to stop you from fully diving into whatever role you've decided to take on. Whether it's pretending to be the host of a cooking show or the star of an action film, these role-playing moments fill the gaps left by the absence of other people around you. It's not even always about acting out grandiose fantasies. Sometimes it's just about indulging in small, everyday roles. You might picture yourself as the head of a bustling household, managing everything with a perfect sense of grace, or you might pretend you're on a reality show, narrating every move with over-the-top enthusiasm. The key here is that you're bringing a sense of play into your life, allowing your imagination to keep things fresh and fun. But these mental escapades do more than just entertain. They also give you a sense of agency. When you're alone, it's easy to feel like everything is just happening to you, with no one to bounce ideas off of or collaborate with. But when you role-play scenarios, you take control. You're the director, the actor, the audience all at once. It's a reminder that even when you're on your own, you still have the power to shape your own reality, at least for a little while. In the end, inventing these imaginary worlds isn't just about filling the silence. It's a way to keep the spark of creativity alive, to keep your mind sharp, and to remind yourself that it's okay to let go of reality every now and then. It's a playful form of self-care, one that can turn even the quietest of days into something a little more exciting. And really, who doesn't need that from time to time? Number 10. Engage in self-reflective conversations or journaling. Living alone in old age can stir up a lot of thoughts. There's something about the quiet, the stillness, that nudges us to look inward more often. Without the usual distractions of family or friends nearby, our minds can wander, and we start to ask ourselves big questions about life, the past, our goals, our dreams, and what we still want to achieve. This is where self-reflective conversations or journaling can really come into play, offering a powerful outlet to process those thoughts. Self-reflection doesn't mean you're sitting in silence, ruminating in a loop about everything that's gone wrong in life. Quite the opposite. It's about engaging with your own thoughts in a meaningful, constructive way. And living alone provides the perfect environment for this. Without the noise of the outside world, it's easier to tune into your inner voice and take the time to really listen to what's going on inside your head. It's a chance to check in with yourself, figure out where you are emotionally, and start to understand what you need or desire moving forward. One way to do this is through self-reflective conversations. You don't have to be speaking out loud, necessarily, though some might find it helpful to have a heart-to-heart with themselves. It's more about creating a dialogue in your own mind. Ask yourself questions like, how am I feeling today? What am I proud of? What would I do differently if I could start over? These aren't just idle musings. They're ways to dig deeper, to peel back layers, and to uncover the truths that may have gotten buried over the years. It's a chance to be honest with yourself, without judgment or fear of criticism. Now, journaling takes this a step further. Writing down your thoughts not only helps you get them out of your head, but it also forces you to slow down and really process everything. The act of putting pen to paper can make a big difference in how you understand and manage your emotions. It's like holding up a mirror to your soul. What may feel like a jumble of feelings in your mind suddenly becomes more structured when you write it down. Your thoughts have a way of becoming clearer, more focused, and sometimes even more surprising than you'd expect. And let's not forget the joy that can come from rereading old journals. What starts as a simple exercise of pouring your thoughts onto the page transforms into a valuable record of your journey. Looking back at what you've written over the months or years can reveal patterns, growth, and even moments of insight that you didn't fully appreciate at the time. It's like holding a conversation with your past self, learning from where you've been and finding clarity in where you're headed. There's also something deeply therapeutic about this kind of introspection. When you live alone, especially as you get older, it's easy to feel disconnected or unsure of your place in the world. But through self-reflection, you regain control. You can reaffirm your values, rewrite your goals, and reframe the story of your life. You start to feel like the author of your own narrative again, and that's a powerful thing. And don't worry if you're not a natural writer or if your reflections seem small or trivial. The beauty of journaling or self-reflection is that it's for you, and you alone. There's no need for perfection. What matters is that you're taking the time to process, to feel, and to grow. So, whether it's a quick jot in a notebook or a long, drawn-out session of talking to yourself, these moments of self-reflection can become an anchor in your day. And in the silence of living alone, they help you stay connected to yourself in a way that brings peace, clarity, and even joy. Number 11, avoid opening up emotionally out of fear of burdening others. As we get older and live alone, a strange thing happens. We start holding our emotions in check, often more than we realize. It's not that we don't feel deeply anymore. In fact, the opposite might be true. The older we get, the more we experience. But there's a hesitation to open up, to share what's really going on inside, because we don't want to burden anyone. The fear of being too much for others, of overwhelming them with our troubles, becomes a quiet weight we carry with us. It's a delicate balance. On one hand, we want to connect. We want to be heard, to have someone acknowledge that we're not just existing, but truly living with all the emotions that come with it. On the other hand, there's this nagging fear that our struggles, whether they're physical, emotional, or just the simple wear and tear of life, might be too much for others to handle. Maybe they have their own problems, their own busy lives, and we don't want to add to their load. So, we retreat inwardly. We bottle things up, pretending everything's fine when, in reality, we're carrying more than we let on. This tendency to avoid emotional openness isn't about being strong or independent. It's rooted in a subtle form of self-protection. There's a fear that if we ask for help or express our sadness, frustration, or loneliness, we'll be seen as a burden. And that thought is enough to make us hesitate before reaching out. It's as though our emotions become a fragile thing we don't want to break. We don't want to make others uncomfortable or put them in a position where they feel obligated to fix something that might be unfixable. But here's the thing, by not opening up, we often end up isolating ourselves even more. The walls we build to protect others from our feelings also end up keeping us distant from the very people who might be able to offer support. And sometimes, it's in these moments of emotional withholding that loneliness feels the heaviest. Because when you don't let anyone in, it's easy to feel like no one truly sees you, not just the happy moments, but the moments when you need a kind word or a gentle hand to hold. Still, that voice of doubt lingers, doesn't it? Am I asking for too much? We wonder. Do they really want to hear what I'm going through? The internal dialogue becomes a trap. We want to be strong. We want to be the person who doesn't need constant help. But the truth is, we all need connection. We need others to know us fully, not just the person we present on the surface, but the real, vulnerable version of ourselves that comes with all the aches, joys, and insecurities that accompany aging. So, we sit with our emotions, unsure of how to share them. We hold back, thinking we'll spare others the trouble. But the reality is that opening up, truly opening up can be freeing. It can deepen relationships and remind us that we're not alone in our struggles. It's not about being a burden, it's about showing up as our full selves, without apology. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most human thing we can do. Because in the end, we all want to be seen. We all want to know that someone cares, not just about the good days, but about the ones where we need a little extra understanding. Number 12, overanalyze short interactions for hidden meanings. Living alone, especially as you get older, tends to make you hyper-aware of the smallest details. And, sometimes, this awareness manifests itself in ways you might not expect. For instance, you'll find yourself overanalyzing short, seemingly insignificant interactions with people, looking for hidden meanings behind every word, tone, or gesture. A simple "how's it going" from a friend or a brief chat with the cashier at the store can suddenly become a riddle that needs solving. It's like the more alone you are, the more you start questioning the subtleties of social exchange, as if you're searching for something deeper, something more than what meets the eye. It starts innocently enough, just a passing thought here and there. Did she seem a little distant, or why did he say that with such a weird emphasis? But before long, these tiny, casual moments can grow into full-blown investigations. You might catch yourself replaying the conversation in your mind, dissecting every word and the way it was said, trying to decode its hidden significance. Maybe someone mentioned the weather in a strange tone, and now, all of a sudden, you're convinced it's not about the weather at all, it's some sort of subtle clue about something else. Maybe they were hinting at something personal or making a judgment about you. And that, my friend, is where the rabbit hole begins. It's not that you're paranoid, necessarily, it's more that the silence of living alone gives your mind more room to wander. You begin to read between the lines in ways that you wouldn't have if you had more people around. Conversations, interactions, even body language, everything starts to feel like it could hold a secret meaning. Did the person's smile seem forced, or were they genuinely happy to see you? Why did they pause when they asked about your health? Did they say "take care" with a little extra emphasis? It's a strange dance of interpretation, where even the most innocent words can seem charged with unspoken implications. The isolation of living alone often makes those small moments of human connection feel more intense, and with that intensity comes the tendency to overanalyze. There's no one around to help you process the encounter in real time, so your mind becomes its own investigator, replaying every interaction to extract meaning that may or may not even exist. And then, in this overthinking whirlpool, a simple greeting can take on a life of its own. Was it a sign of affection? A hint of something more? Or perhaps it was just a normal, casual comment? What makes this tendency even more interesting is how it stretches beyond just words. You start to analyze things like how someone holds eye contact, or how long they took to respond to a text. The slightest shift in their tone of voice could send your mind spiraling into a world of what-ifs. And sometimes, this overanalysis doesn't just stop at one person. You might find yourself reinterpreting past conversations, looking for signs you missed the first time around, as if your brain is creating a puzzle that needs solving. At its core, this overanalyzing is a product of the solitude that comes with living alone. When there's less daily human interaction, your brain craves it more. It begins to stretch those small moments of connection, trying to extract as much meaning as it can. It's like your mind is desperately searching for something significant in the smallest gestures, desperate to find clues that could explain emotions, intentions, or even hidden desires. You might not always find what you're looking for, but that doesn't stop you from searching, because sometimes, just sometimes, the answer feels just a little bit within reach. Ever wondered what makes older people who enjoy being alone so unique? In this video, we're uncovering 12 incredible qualities that set them apart, qualities that might just inspire you to embrace solitude in a whole new way. Stick with us until the end for a surprising twist that'll change how you see independence. You don't want to miss this. Number 1. Self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency is like a superpower that people who enjoy their own company seem to have mastered. It's not just about doing things on their own, it's about thriving while doing so. These individuals are perfectly at ease being their own biggest supporters, cheerleaders, and problem solvers. They've built a life where they rely less on external validation and more on their own abilities, which is something a lot of people admire but few actually achieve. Think about it, when someone chooses solitude, it's not because they're running away from people. It's because they're running toward themselves. They've learned how to navigate life's twists and turns without constantly leaning on others. Whether it's handling daily chores, managing finances, or finding ways to keep themselves entertained, they've got it covered. And the cool part? They don't just survive in their solitude, they thrive. Now, self-sufficiency doesn't mean they shut people out or reject help when it's genuinely needed. Nope, that's not their style. Instead, they've cultivated this amazing ability to find balance. They can handle their business solo, but they're also smart enough to know when to connect, collaborate, or reach out for advice. It's not about isolation, it's about independence. There's a quiet confidence that comes with being self-sufficient. These folks don't panic when things go sideways. A busted pipe? They'll figure out how to fix it, or at least how to find someone who can. An unexpected challenge at work? They're not losing sleep over it, they're crafting solutions. They trust themselves to handle life's curveballs, which gives them a certain calmness that others find magnetic. What's also fascinating is how self-sufficient people redefine the idea of fun. They're not waiting for someone else to make plans or entertain them. They're out there exploring hobbies, diving into books, learning new skills, or just enjoying a peaceful evening with their thoughts. They find joy in the simplicity of being. And that's powerful because it means they're not reliant on anyone else to feel fulfilled. But here's the thing, self-sufficiency doesn't come without effort. It takes a lot of inner work to get to a place where you're genuinely comfortable relying on yourself. These individuals have likely spent years building their skills, understanding their emotions, and learning how to meet their own needs. It's not about being perfect, it's about being resourceful, adaptable, and resilient. And let's be real, in a world where so many people are glued to their phones, seeking likes and comments for validation, self-sufficient people are a breath of fresh air. They don't need the applause. They're already clapping for themselves, and that's what makes them so inspiring. In the end, self-sufficiency is not just a skill, it's a lifestyle. It's about knowing you're enough, just as you are, and living a life that reflects that truth. It's no wonder these folks cherish their alone time, they've got everything they need within themselves. Number 2, unwavering focus on personal growth. There's something truly fascinating about older folks who enjoy their own company. They're like finely aged wine, complex, rich, and full of depth. One of their standout qualities? An almost magnetic pull toward personal growth. It's not that they're chasing perfection or ticking boxes on some imaginary self-improvement chart. No, it's more organic, like a natural curiosity about how they can be better, not for others, but for themselves. When you spend a lot of time alone, you inevitably spend a lot of time with you. You start to notice things most people brush off in the noise of daily life. Maybe it's how you react when plans go sideways or the way you talk to yourself on tough days. Instead of running from these moments, people who relish solitude lean in. They treat these observations as breadcrumbs leading them to a better version of themselves. And let's face it, that's no small thing. What makes their approach unique is the intensity of their focus. They don't dabble in self-improvement as a hobby or a quick fix. It's more like a slow-burn commitment to leveling up, not for external validation, but because growth feels good. It's almost like a private game they play, testing their limits, tweaking their habits, and evolving their mindset. They get a quiet thrill from figuring out how to stay calm when life gets stormy or how to find joy in the little things most people miss. They're their own biggest project, and they approach it with patience and a lot of heart. Now, here's the kicker: this focus on growth doesn't feel like work to them. It's woven into the fabric of their everyday lives. Whether it's diving into a book that challenges their perspective, reflecting on their actions at the end of the day, or even sitting in silence to understand what their gut is trying to tell them, it's all part of the process. They've mastered the art of listening, not just to others, but to themselves. And let's talk about resilience. People who value solitude tend to develop an inner strength that's hard to shake. By constantly striving to understand themselves better, they build a kind of mental armor. Challenges still hit them, of course, but they don't crumble. Instead, they adapt, learn, and come out the other side with a deeper sense of who they are. They view setbacks not as failures, but as detours, opportunities to grow in ways they didn't expect. At the heart of it all is this idea: growth isn't a destination, it's a journey. And these solitary souls are perfectly okay with taking the long road. They've got no one to impress, no deadlines to meet, and no race to run. It's just them, their thoughts, and a quiet determination to keep becoming the best version of themselves. And honestly, that kind of focus is rare, beautiful, and a little bit magical. Number 3, high tolerance for silence. Ever notice how some people can sit in absolute silence and seem completely at ease? Like, they're not fidgeting, looking at their phones, or feeling the need to fill the air with words. That's the vibe of older folks who enjoy their alone time. They have this almost magical ability to just be. It's not awkward or boring for them, it's their comfort zone. Silence isn't empty for these people, it's full of peace, reflection, and clarity. Now, let's be real, silence can feel super uncomfortable for a lot of us. Think about those moments when you're in an elevator with a stranger. It's like every second stretches into eternity. But for someone with a high tolerance for quiet, that same silence feels like a warm blanket. They don't see it as a void, they see it as a chance to breathe, think, or even just exist without the noise of the world crashing in. It's almost like they've built this inner strength over time, and silence is their fortress. One of the coolest things about their love for silence is how they can use it to recharge. You know how some people feel drained after a long day of constant chatter, meetings, or noise from a bustling world? Older people who embrace solitude seem to have cracked the code. They've figured out that silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's like a reset button for their mind and spirit. It's their way of tuning out the static of life so they can tune into their own thoughts. And it's not just about being okay with quiet, it's about thriving in it. When you're comfortable with silence, you don't rush to fill it with meaningless chatter. You don't need external distractions to feel whole. You can just sit there, maybe sipping on tea or gazing out the window, and let your thoughts flow freely. It's like they've turned silence into their personal sanctuary, a place where they can sort through their thoughts or even just enjoy the stillness. This high tolerance for silence also gives them an edge when it comes to listening. Since they're not uncomfortable with quiet moments, they're less likely to interrupt or feel the need to jump in with their opinions. They're the kind of people who let you talk, pause, and collect your thoughts without rushing you. They're patient in a way that's rare these days. It's almost like they've trained themselves to see the beauty in those small gaps between words. But don't get it twisted, they're not shutting out the world. They're just selective about the noise they let in. They value conversations, but they also understand that silence can speak volumes. To them, silence is a form of connection, with themselves, with their surroundings, and even with other people who understand the same language of quiet. So yeah, while silence might make some of us squirm, these folks treat it like an old friend. And honestly, that's a pretty amazing quality to have in a world that never seems to stop talking. Number 4, authenticity in actions and decisions. When it comes to authenticity, Older people who enjoy their own company seem to have cracked the code. They live and breathe it, not as some trendy buzzword but as a deeply ingrained way of being. For them, it's about showing up in the world as they are, without masks or pretenses. Their actions and decisions reflect their true values, beliefs, and priorities, not what society expects or what others might think they should do. And honestly, that's kind of rare these days, isn't it? Being authentic means they've stopped trying to fit into boxes or live up to other people's expectations. They've been there, done that, and frankly, it doesn't interest them anymore. They're not making choices to impress anyone or gain approval. Instead, they focus on what feels right for them, even if it's not the most popular or conventional path. It's not about being rebellious for the sake of it, it's about being real. What makes this so refreshing is the clarity it brings. When these individuals decide something, you know it comes from a genuine place. There's no guessing game, no hidden agenda. Whether it's a big life decision or a seemingly small everyday choice, it all aligns with who they truly are. That kind of consistency is rare and incredibly inspiring. It's like their internal compass is so finely tuned that it always points to their personal truth. And here's the thing, authenticity doesn't mean they're perfect or always right. Far from it. They've made their fair share of mistakes, but those missteps have taught them to own their choices, good or bad. They don't waste energy pretending to be something they're not or covering up flaws. If anything, they embrace those imperfections because they know that's what makes them human and relatable. Another cool aspect of their authenticity is how it makes them so trustworthy. When someone consistently acts in alignment with their true self, you can't help but feel a sense of respect for them. You know where they stand. They're not going to say one thing and do another. And they're definitely not going to tell you what you want to hear just to keep the peace. They value honesty, not in a harsh, unkind way, but in a grounded, straightforward manner that feels more real than anything else. Their authenticity also shines in the way they handle relationships. They're not in the business of playing games or putting up facades. The connections they form are genuine, built on mutual respect and understanding. And if something, or someone, doesn't align with their values, they're not afraid to walk away. It's not about being cold or dismissive, it's about protecting their peace and staying true to themselves. In the end, this unwavering commitment to authenticity is one of their most admirable qualities. It's not flashy or loud, but it's deeply impactful. It's the quiet confidence of knowing who you are, what you stand for, and living in a way that honors that every single day. That's the kind of energy that leaves a lasting impression. Number 5. Enhanced ability to manage time alone productively. Older people who enjoy their own company have a knack for something that feels almost like a superpower. They know how to make their alone time count. It's not just about filling the hours, it's about squeezing meaning, growth, and joy out of every moment. Their approach to time is deliberate, even artistic, and it's fascinating to watch, or imagine. First, let's start with the basics. They don't see being alone as empty space to fill. To them, solitude is an open canvas, brimming with possibility. Whether it's diving into hobbies, tackling long-term goals, or simply getting lost in thought, they know how to shape their day so it feels both satisfying and intentional. Their time management isn't rigid or dictated by endless to-do lists. Instead, it's intuitive, flowing like a river, calm when it needs to be, swift when the moment calls for it. What really sets them apart is their ability to balance productivity with presence. They're not about that hustle-all-day mentality. Nope, they've learned that being productive isn't just about doing more, it's about doing better. This could mean dedicating an hour to something deeply fulfilling or taking time to recharge so they can give their best effort later. Their approach is more about quality than quantity, and it's refreshing. But here's the thing, this ability didn't just fall out of the sky. It's a skill they've honed over time. Being alone teaches you a lot about yourself, what you value, what drains you, and what fuels you. These older, solitude-loving folks have taken those lessons to heart. They've figured out how to focus without distractions, how to prioritize without guilt, and how to pace themselves so they don't burn out. There's no rushing, no frantic energy. Just a steady rhythm that works. Another layer to their productivity is their creativity. Time alone gives them the freedom to explore their thoughts, and this often leads to bursts of inspiration. Whether they're creating something tangible or just connecting the dots between ideas, they use their time to spark new possibilities. It's not forced, it's just what happens when your mind has room to breathe. Of course, there's also a sense of balance in how they approach their alone time. They know when to work hard and when to rest, when to plan and when to just be. They're not afraid to unplug, step back, and enjoy a quiet moment with their own thoughts. And let's be honest, in a world that's constantly pulling us in a million directions, that's a rare and valuable skill. Ultimately, their ability to manage time alone productively is rooted in self-awareness. They've figured out what makes them tick and what doesn't, and they use that knowledge to make their solitude meaningful. It's not about keeping busy, it's about being intentional. And in that intentionality lies the magic. They don't just spend time, they live it fully, on their own terms. Number 6, resilience. Resilience. It's not just a word, it's a vibe, a way of living that older people who enjoy their own company have mastered. These are the folks who have been through some storms, maybe a few hurricanes, too, and still manage to come out on the other side, standing tall. They're like trees with roots so deep that even the wildest winds can't knock them down. Now, what's fascinating about their resilience is how quiet and understated it can be. They don't brag about the challenges they've overcome or the heartbreaks they've survived. They just carry it with them, like a well-worn jacket that's seen better days but still fits perfectly. There's a strength in that, right? It's not flashy, but it's real. It's the kind of resilience that grows from facing life's ups and downs alone, not because they had to, but because they chose to. They're comfortable being their own support system, which is a superpower in itself. You know, being alone isn't always easy. It takes guts to face your own thoughts, to sit with your emotions, and to confront whatever life throws at you without immediately running to someone else to fix it. But that's where resilience is born, in those quiet moments when no one else is around to hold you up. It's about learning to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and say, "All right, let's try this again," even when everything feels like a mess. And here's the thing, resilient people don't avoid pain or struggle. Nope. They've seen enough of life to know that hard times are part of the deal. But instead of letting those tough moments break them, they use them as fuel. It's like they've got this inner alchemy that turns adversity into strength. Sure, they might stumble or fall, but they always get back up. Maybe not right away, but eventually. And when they do, they're even stronger than before. What's really cool is how their resilience shows up in little ways, too. It's not always about surviving some massive, life-changing event. Sometimes, it's just about showing up for yourself day after day. It's about sticking to your own rhythm, even when the world feels like it's moving at 1,000,000 miles per hour. It's about finding peace in your own company and knowing that, no matter what happens, you'll figure it out. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will. This resilience isn't loud or dramatic, it's steady and unshakable. It's like they've made peace with the fact that life isn't always fair, and that's okay. They don't let setbacks define them or keep them stuck. They adapt. They grow. They keep moving forward, even if it's just one tiny step at a time. So yeah, resilience isn't just something they have, it's something they are. And that's pretty incredible when you think about it. They're living proof that no matter how hard life gets, you can always find a way to keep going. Number 7, Strong sense of independence. A strong sense of independence is like a badge of honor for older people who love their alone time. They don't just wear it, they live it, breathe it, and embody it in everything they do. It's not about stubbornly refusing help or isolating themselves from the world. No, it's way deeper than that. It's about having the confidence and capability to navigate life on their own terms. They don't need anyone to complete them or tell them what to do, they've got it handled. Let's be real, independence doesn't just happen overnight. It's something they've earned through years of experiences, challenges, and growth. They've learned how to solve their own problems, make their own decisions, and trust their own judgment. That's a big deal in a world where so many people rely on others for guidance or validation. They know what they're about, and they're not afraid to stand alone, even if it's not the easiest path. What's really inspiring is the quiet strength that comes with their independence. They don't shout it from the rooftops or try to prove anything to anyone. They just go about their lives, making choices that reflect who they are and what they want. It's not about being defiant, it's about being free. Free from unnecessary dependencies, free from societal pressures, and free to live in a way that feels authentic to them. One of the coolest things about their independence is how it spills into every area of their life. Need something fixed? They'll figure it out. Want to try something new? They're diving in head first. They're not waiting around for someone else to take the lead because they know they're perfectly capable of doing it themselves. And if they don't know how, they'll learn. That's the beauty of their mindset. They're resourceful, adaptable, and unafraid to take on challenges. Their independence also gives them a unique sense of freedom when it comes to relationships. They don't cling to people out of fear or insecurity. Instead, they choose connections that add value to their lives. They're not afraid of being alone because they know they're whole all by themselves. This makes their relationships more meaningful, too. When they let someone in, it's because they genuinely want to, not because they feel they need to. Of course, independence doesn't mean they shut people out or refuse help when it's truly necessary. It's more about knowing they can handle things on their own, but also having the wisdom to accept support when it makes sense. That balance is what makes their independence so solid. It's rooted in self-awareness, not ego. At the end of the day, this strong sense of independence is like their secret superpower. It allows them to live boldly, confidently, and unapologetically. They've built a life that works for them, and they don't need permission to enjoy it. That kind of self-assured independence? It's rare. And it's absolutely inspiring. Number 8, strong boundaries and respect for personal space. One of the standout qualities of older people who genuinely enjoy their own company is their rock-solid sense of boundaries. They've spent enough time with themselves to know what they need, and, just as importantly, what they don't need. This clarity translates into a strong ability to protect their personal space, both physically and emotionally. It's not about being closed off, it's about understanding that everyone, even the most social butterfly, needs a little room to breathe. Let's talk about those boundaries. They're not walls designed to keep people out. No, they're more like gates, deliberately placed and carefully tended. These gates swing open for meaningful connections and slam shut on unnecessary drama, toxic energy, or distractions that derail their peace. It's not about being rude or distant. It's about self-respect, plain and simple. The beauty of this lies in their unapologetic approach to saying no. They've mastered it. Whether it's an invitation that doesn't align with their priorities or a request that stretches them too thin, they decline with grace. They've learned that a no to others is often a yes to themselves. And honestly, that's a lesson most people take a lifetime to figure out. Respecting personal space is a big part of this picture, too. Older individuals who like to spend time alone don't just demand it for themselves, they understand and honor it for others. They know the value of quiet moments and the power of stepping back when someone needs their own bubble of solitude. It's a give-and-take dynamic, and they navigate it with ease. There's no guilt-tripping, no overstepping. Just an innate understanding that space is a gift we all need from time to time. Here's the kicker: this boundary-setting ability makes their relationships stronger, not weaker. By carving out time for themselves, they ensure that when they are with others, they're fully present. There's no underlying resentment, no sense of being stretched too thin. They show up as their best selves because they've taken the time to recharge and realign. It's like their relationships get the best version of them, not the tired, overextended one. But let's not sugarcoat it, setting boundaries takes guts. It requires them to know themselves deeply and stand firm when others push back. It's not always easy, and it's definitely not always popular. Yet, they do it anyway because they understand that without boundaries, personal peace is up for grabs. What makes it all work is the quiet confidence they exude. They don't feel the need to justify their choices or explain themselves endlessly. Their actions speak for them. This is what I need, and that's okay. It's a powerful, unspoken message that radiates self-respect and, in turn, commands respect from others. At the heart of it all, these individuals have learned that boundaries and personal space aren't luxuries, they're necessities. They're the foundation for a life that feels balanced, authentic, and uniquely their own. And that's a quality worth celebrating. Number 9, a deeper connection with nature. There's something almost poetic about how older people who like being alone connect with nature. It's not just a casual appreciation, it's a bond, a kind of quiet intimacy that feels as natural as the breeze. For them, nature isn't just scenery or a backdrop, it's a sanctuary, a companion, and sometimes, even a teacher. They don't just see the world around them, they feel it, deeply and completely, in a way that's hard to put into words. You know that feeling when you step outside and everything just slows down? The rustling leaves, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the distant hum of life moving at its own pace, it's like time stands still. That's the kind of vibe they thrive in. They don't need the constant buzz of notifications or the clamor of crowded places. Instead, they find their rhythm in the chirping of birds, the sway of trees, or the way light filters through clouds. Nature speaks to them in its quiet, unhurried language, and they're more than happy to listen. But it's not just about noticing pretty sunsets or enjoying a nice walk. Their connection to nature runs much deeper. It's like they've learned to sync their inner world with the natural one. They see cycles in the seasons, growth, change, rest, and reflect those patterns in their own lives. They've learned to embrace life's ebb and flow, just like the tides. There's wisdom in that, don't you think? Letting go of the need to control everything and just trusting the process, the same way a river carves its path over time. And then there's the way they engage with nature, not as an outsider but as part of it. When they sit under a tree, it's not just about shade, it's about feeling rooted, grounded. When they hear the rain, it's not just white noise, it's a symphony. They don't rush past flowers or streams or the shapes of clouds, they pause, breathe it all in, and let it sink into their bones. It's not performative either. They're not trying to post about it or turn it into some grand declaration. It's private, almost sacred. Spending time alone has a way of sharpening your senses. Without distractions, you notice things others might miss, the way the wind shifts just before a storm, the smell of the earth after rain, the subtle shades of green in a single leaf. Older people who cherish solitude seem to tap into this heightened awareness effortlessly. It's like they've trained their minds to see the magic in the mundane. And nature gives back, doesn't it? It offers a kind of healing that words can't replicate. When the world feels too loud, too fast, too much, nature is always there, steady and constant. It doesn't ask for anything in return. It just exists, offering its beauty and calm to anyone willing to notice. For these folks, that's enough. So, their deeper connection with nature isn't about escapism. It's about harmony. It's about finding balance, peace, and a sense of belonging in the world's oldest rhythm. And honestly, that's pretty awe-inspiring. Number 10. Heightened observational skills. Heightened observational skills are like a secret weapon for older people who value their alone time. It's almost as if spending more time in their own company sharpens their senses, making them incredibly attuned to the world around them. They don't just see things, they notice them. The subtle details, the unspoken cues, the quiet shifts in energy, they pick it all up while most people are too busy rushing through life to even glance around. This kind of observation is more than just a skill, it's almost like an art form. They've mastered the ability to slow down and really take in their surroundings. When others might overlook something, a flicker of emotion on someone's face, the way light dances on water, or the faint smell of rain in the air, these individuals catch it, absorb it, and sometimes even find meaning in it. It's like their minds are wired to notice the little things that make life interesting. One reason their observational skills are so sharp is that they've embraced the quiet. Solitude allows them the space to really look and listen, without the constant noise of distractions. They're not buried in endless conversations or glued to their phones, so they have the time to simply observe. It's a habit that's grown stronger over the years, like a muscle they've intentionally trained. But their heightened observation isn't limited to the physical world. They're also incredibly good at picking up on emotions and vibes. Maybe it's because they spend so much time reflecting on their own feelings that they've learned to spot what others might be going through, even when it's not obvious. They're the kind of people who can tell when someone's off, even if that person hasn't said a word about it. What's fascinating is how they use these observational skills. They're not just noticing things for the sake of it. They're connecting dots, making sense of patterns, and sometimes even drawing conclusions that others miss entirely. It's not about being a detective or showing off their insights, it's about truly understanding the world and the people in it. It makes them thoughtful and deliberate in how they interact, and that's something people quietly admire about them. And let's not forget, their ability to observe often leads to a deeper appreciation for life. They notice the beauty in the mundane, the symmetry of a tree branch, the rhythm of raindrops on a window, or the quiet hum of a room. It's like they've tapped into a secret layer of reality that others might skim over. That awareness brings a sense of peace and wonder that makes their alone time even more fulfilling. In a way, their heightened observational skills are their superpower. They see the world differently, more clearly, more fully. It's not just about what they notice, it's about how they use those observations to better understand themselves, others, and life as a whole. That kind of insight? It's priceless. Number 11. Unique problem-solving abilities. There's something almost magical about the way older people who enjoy solitude tackle problems. They're not your standard, by-the-book thinkers. Instead, they bring a depth of creativity and calm to the table that sets them apart. It's like their time alone has given them a mental toolbox full of unconventional tools, ones they know exactly how to use when life throws them a curveball. First off, they're not in a rush. When a problem shows up, they don't panic or scramble for the quickest solution just to get it over with. No, they take a step back, maybe even two, and give themselves the space to think. It's almost like they have an internal switch that flips from react to reflect. They know that real solutions take clarity, and clarity comes from slowing down, not speeding up. This approach also means they're great at seeing the bigger picture. They're not the kind to get caught up in minor details or let emotions cloud their judgment. Instead, they zoom out and look at the situation from all angles. What's really going on here? What's the root cause? And most importantly, what's the best way to move forward? These are the questions they ask themselves, not just to find an answer but to find the right answer. Another thing that makes their problem-solving unique is their creativity. Solitude gives them time to think deeply and explore ideas most people don't even consider. They've learned that there's rarely a one-size-fits-all solution to anything. So, they mix and match approaches, draw inspiration from their experiences, and even come up with entirely new ways to tackle challenges. It's like they're artists, but instead of painting on canvas, they're solving life's puzzles. And let's not forget their ability to stay calm under pressure. When others might be losing their cool or spiraling into worst-case scenarios, these folks are steady as a rock. Time alone has taught them how to sit with discomfort and uncertainty, which makes them less likely to be overwhelmed when problems arise. They don't shy away from challenges, they lean into them with quiet confidence, knowing that every problem has a solution, you just have to find it. What's particularly interesting is how resourceful they are. They don't need a ton of fancy tools or elaborate plans to fix something. Give them what's available, and they'll figure out a way to make it work. It's not just about thinking outside the box, it's about realizing the box was never necessary in the first place. They thrive on adaptability, turning even the most chaotic situations into manageable ones with a bit of ingenuity. At their core, these problem solvers are guided by a deep trust in themselves. They've spent so much time learning their own strengths and weaknesses that they know how to approach any challenge with clarity and determination. They're not afraid to fail either. To them, failure is just another step toward the right solution. It's all part of the process. In the end, their ability to solve problems isn't just a skill, it's a mindset. It's a quiet belief that no matter what life throws their way, they have what it takes to handle it. And honestly, that kind of calm, creative confidence is pretty inspiring. Number 12, tendency to prioritize quality over quantity in all aspects of life. When you spend a lot of time alone, you start to see the world differently. You notice what truly matters, and honestly, it's not having more of everything, it's having the right things. Older people who enjoy solitude are pros at this. They're not interested in keeping up with the rat race or chasing after endless options. Instead, they focus on what feels meaningful, valuable, and real. They've cracked the code on prioritizing quality over quantity, and it shows in every corner of their lives. Take their belongings, for example. These folks aren't the type to fill their homes with mountains of stuff just for the sake of it. Nope. They're more likely to have a few items that mean something, a cozy chair that feels like a hug after a long day, a well-worn book that speaks to their soul, or a sturdy pair of shoes that's carried them through countless adventures. They value things that last, things that serve a purpose or bring them joy. It's not about being fancy or minimalist, it's about intentionality. If it doesn't add value to their life, it doesn't make the cut. And it's not just about material stuff. This quality over quantity mindset seeps into their relationships, too. They're not interested in superficial connections or fleeting small talk. They'd rather have a handful of deep, meaningful bonds than a crowd of acquaintances. You know those people who always seem surrounded by noise and chatter but still feel lonely? Yeah, that's not their scene. They'd rather sit in comfortable silence with someone who truly gets them than be in a room full of people who barely scratch the surface. For them, relationships are about depth, not breadth. Even their time gets this special treatment. Time is precious, and they know it. They're not about to waste it on things that don't align with their values or bring them closer to the life they want. They'd rather spend an afternoon immersed in a hobby they love than scatter their energy across a dozen meaningless activities. It's not that they're antisocial or overly picky, it's just that they understand the beauty of focusing on what really matters. When you only have so much time in a day, why not spend it on something that actually fills your cup? Food, experiences, conversations, it's all the same. They're not interested in excess or flashiness, they care about substance. A quiet, Heartfelt chat beats a noisy gathering any day. A meal made with care and fresh ingredients means more than a quick bite on the go. A single, well-chosen adventure leaves a bigger impact than a dozen rushed trips. The truth is, this tendency to prioritize quality over quantity isn't about being snobby or difficult. It's about having clarity. It's about knowing who you are, what you need, and what truly makes you happy. They've learned that life isn't about having more, it's about having better. And honestly, that's a lesson we could all use a little more of. Living alone as you get older can be both rewarding and challenging, but there are things no one ever talks about. From unexpected loneliness to surprising new freedoms, this video dives deep into the realities of solo living that you won't hear anywhere else. Stick around till the end for some game-changing tips that could completely transform your experience. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Number 1. Greater freedom but also more responsibility for day-to-day decisions. Living alone as an older person? Let me tell you, it's a mixed bag of highs and lows, especially when it comes to making day-to-day decisions. On one hand, there's this intoxicating freedom. You can do what you want, when you want, how you want. Nobody's around to tell you what's for dinner, what time to sleep, or whether the sofa is an appropriate place to eat spaghetti. Sounds like a dream, right? But here's the kicker, with that freedom comes a mountain of responsibility, and that can feel heavy when you're the only one holding it up. Let's talk about this freedom first because, honestly, it's amazing. Want to turn your living room into an indoor garden? Go for it. Feel like rearranging your furniture in the middle of the night just because you can? Nobody's stopping you. There's no compromising with someone else about colors, schedules, or how loud you can blast your favorite tunes. That kind of autonomy is rare, and when you have it, it can feel like a gift. But here's the part people don't always tell you. Every decision, even the tiny ones, is entirely on you. And that's not always as glamorous as it sounds. What's for breakfast? Should you fix that squeaky door hinge today, or let it drive you nuts for another week? Should you finally call a plumber about the dripping faucet, or is it not that bad yet? These little things pile up. You'd think they'd be easy choices, but when you're the one deciding everything, it can sometimes feel like a never-ending mental workout. It's not just about practical decisions, either. Emotional and lifestyle choices come into play too. There's no one to bounce ideas off of, no second opinion when you're unsure about something. While that can be liberating, no arguments, no debates, it can also make you feel a little stranded at times. Sure, you're the captain of your ship, but it's a ship sailing solo. And sometimes the sea is foggy. And let's be real, decision fatigue is a thing. After a while, even choosing which coffee mug to use in the morning can feel like a monumental task. Sounds silly, right? But when it's just you, every choice, no matter how small, reminds you that you're the one in charge. That can feel empowering on good days, but overwhelming on the harder ones. There's also the accountability factor. No one's there to pick up the slack if you decide to ignore something important. Forgot to buy groceries? That's on you. Didn't clean the house for weeks? You can't blame anyone else. And while it's nice to be free of nagging, you quickly realize that sometimes a little nagging, whether it's from a partner, or roommate, or even a family member, has its benefits. So, greater freedom? Definitely. But also greater responsibility, and that's not something everyone expects when they imagine the joys of living alone. It's all a balancing act, and how you handle it depends on your mindset, energy, and willingness to take ownership of every little part of your day. Number 2, struggling with boredom or lack of mental stimulation. Living alone as an older person can sometimes feel like you've entered a strange kind of echo chamber. The quiet might be nice at first, but after a while, that silence can start to feel heavy. It's not just about missing noise or company, it's about realizing how much of your day-to-day engagement used to come from being around others. When you're by yourself, you might notice that your mind isn't as active as it once was, and boredom starts creeping in like an uninvited guest. Sure, you can fill the time with hobbies or routines, but let's be honest, it's not always easy to keep that spark alive on your own. There's something about having another person around, someone to toss ideas back and forth with, that keeps your brain buzzing. Without that interaction, your thoughts can feel like they're running on a loop. It's like flipping through the same few TV channels over and over, hoping to find something new. And even if you do find something, it doesn't always hold your attention the way it used to. Then there's the challenge of keeping yourself mentally sharp. When you don't have regular conversations or activities that push your thinking, your mind can feel a little foggy. It's not that you're losing your wits, it's more like your brain isn't getting the workout it needs. You might even start to miss the little debates or disagreements that used to frustrate you. Who knew that arguing about what's for dinner could actually keep your mind so sharp? Now, let's talk about boredom. It's sneaky. It doesn't hit you all at once, it creeps in during those quiet afternoons when you've already read the paper, watched the news, and scrolled through your phone. Suddenly, you realize you're just sitting there, waiting, for what? You're not even sure. That's the thing about living alone, time can stretch in ways that feel uncomfortable. You start to crave something, anything, that will make the hours feel meaningful again. The tricky part is, finding mental stimulation when you're alone often requires a little extra effort. It's not just handed to you. You have to go looking for it, whether that means diving into puzzles, learning a new skill, or even just making an effort to think differently about your everyday tasks. But let's be real, it's not always easy to motivate yourself when there's no one else around to share in your successes or even laugh with you when things go wrong. Ultimately, struggling with boredom and a lack of mental stimulation is something that sneaks up on you. It's not about being lazy or uninspired, it's about missing that natural flow of energy and ideas that comes from being part of a bigger, more connected world. And while you can find ways to cope, it's okay to admit that it's a challenge. Some days are harder than others, and that's perfectly human. Number 3, the financial burden of managing everything solo. Living alone as an older person sounds liberating at first, your space, your rules, your way of life. But there's a not-so-fun reality that comes crashing down once you're deep in it, the cost. And I'm not just talking about big-ticket items, it's the endless pile of little expenses that sneaks up on you. When you're the only one paying the bills, managing repairs, and stocking the fridge, it's like money just evaporates. Nobody warns you that solo living has a way of turning into solo stressing, especially when the financial burden feels like it's sitting on your chest. Let's start with the basics. Rent or a mortgage, utilities, groceries, those are all on you. There's no splitting the costs or sharing the load. That electric bill? All yours. Internet? Yep, also yours. And groceries, don't even get me started. You might think, hey, it's just me, so I'll save. But no! Buying in bulk doesn't make sense because food goes bad, and smaller quantities somehow cost more. Add in the fact that you don't have someone else to chip in or pick up the slack, and suddenly, you're rationing things like a contestant on a survival show. Then there's home maintenance. Stuff breaks. A leaky faucet, a finicky washing machine, or a fridge that stops keeping things cold. It happens, and it's always inconvenient. If you were living with someone, you'd brainstorm solutions together or maybe split the cost of repairs. Alone? You're stuck calling the plumber, footing the bill, and dealing with the hassle on your own. That can get expensive fast. Plus, let's not forget the sneaky costs, like replacing light bulbs, batteries, or even small appliances. It's the kind of spending that doesn't feel like much until you add it all up. Insurance is another beast. Health insurance, home insurance, maybe even life insurance, none of it is cheap. And if your income is fixed or limited, those monthly premiums feel like a weight dragging you down. You're paying for peace of mind, but the irony is it often feels more like a constant source of stress. And then there's the unexpected. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, medical bills, car troubles, sudden expenses you didn't plan for. When you're alone, there's no one to turn to for financial backup. You're your own safety net. That's terrifying, isn't it? It means you've got to be extra careful with your money, which often translates to cutting back on things that make life enjoyable, like hobbies, social outings, or little treats for yourself. It's a tough balancing act between being responsible and still feeling like you're living, not just surviving. The truth is, managing everything solo can feel overwhelming, no matter how prepared you think you are. It's like trying to juggle too many balls, except every ball is a bill, and dropping one isn't an option. Nobody tells you how much energy goes into just keeping up, and how lonely that financial pressure can make you feel. Number 4, the necessity of planning for medical and caregiving needs. Let's get real for a second. Living alone as an older person isn't just about the freedom to watch TV in your pajamas or eat cereal for dinner. There's a less glamorous side to it, and that's planning for medical and caregiving needs. It's one of those things that doesn't cross your mind until suddenly it does. And when it does, it can feel like staring at a to-do list that keeps growing longer every time you glance away. First, let's talk about the big, unavoidable truth. Your body isn't always going to cooperate. You might feel fine now, but the older we get, the more little things start adding up: aches here, slower reflexes there, maybe the occasional "why does my knee sound like bubble wrap?" These are the moments when having a plan makes all the difference. Living alone means you don't have someone who'll automatically notice if you're not feeling great or if you've forgotten to refill a prescription. That's on you. So, what's the plan? You need one, trust me. Medical appointments? Those are now your responsibility to book, remember, and get to. And don't forget about organizing your records, insurance details, and medications, because no one else will. It's not just about keeping track of the basics either. You've got to think long-term. Do you know who you'd call if you needed help? Have you looked into local caregiving services? What about a medical alert system, just in case? These aren't fun questions, but they're necessary ones. And speaking of caregiving, let's not sugarcoat it. The idea of needing help might feel uncomfortable. No one wants to imagine a day when they can't handle everything on their own. But here's the thing, planning for it now means you get to make those decisions while you're still in control. Do you want professional help, or would you prefer a friend or relative to step in? How would you even pay for it? These are the kinds of questions that can sneak up on you if you're not prepared, and trust me, they're a lot easier to deal with before they're urgent. Now, let's zoom in on something that's often overlooked: day-to-day emergencies. What if you trip and can't reach your phone? What if you wake up one day feeling too sick to cook or drive? Living alone means thinking ahead for those moments when things don't go smoothly. It might mean keeping a stocked freezer for days you can't cook, or having a trusted neighbor on speed dial. It's not paranoia, it's peace of mind. Here's the bottom line: when you live alone, you're the CEO of your life, and part of that job is planning for the what-ifs. It's not the most exciting part of independence, but it's one of the most important. And once you've got it handled, you'll sleep a little better at night, knowing that even if the unexpected happens, you've got a plan to tackle it. Number 5, the emotional impact of fewer daily human interactions. Living alone as an older person has a way of highlighting just how much human connection shapes your emotional world. At first, the idea of solitude might feel refreshing, even liberating. No one to nag you about the dishes in the sink, no need to negotiate what's on TV. But over time, the absence of those small, everyday interactions can create an emotional void that's hard to describe until you've felt it. The truth is, we're wired for connection. It's not about needing someone to lean on all the time, it's the little things that matter. A passing smile. A quick good morning from a neighbor. Even a brief chat with the cashier at the grocery store. These small exchanges might seem trivial when you're surrounded by them, but when they're not there, the silence becomes deafening. Without those tiny sparks of human contact, your days can start to feel flat, like they're missing a vital ingredient. And then there's the loneliness. It's not just the kind of loneliness that comes from being by yourself, it's a deeper sense of isolation, like the world is spinning around you while you stand still. It's funny how you can be surrounded by people in the outside world but still feel invisible. Living alone, those moments of invisibility can stretch longer and longer, and it starts to weigh on you. You might not even notice it at first, but fewer interactions can leave you feeling untethered, almost like you're drifting. You don't have those daily check-ins, those subtle affirmations from others that say, "Hey, you matter." It's not just about being seen, it's about being part of something bigger than yourself. When that's missing, it can stir up all sorts of emotions: sadness, restlessness, even irritability. Some days, you might feel a pang of nostalgia for the times when your days were filled with chatter, laughter, or even the occasional argument. Those moments, as mundane as they seemed, grounded you in a way you didn't fully appreciate until now. The quiet can also amplify everything else you're feeling. Without someone around to share the load, even small worries can feel larger than life. A thought that would have been dismissed with a quick chat now lingers, swirling around in your mind. There's no one to say, "Don't worry, it's not a big deal," or simply distract you with a funny story or a warm hug. And let's not forget the loss of spontaneity. When you're living alone, there's no one to pull you out of your own head with an unexpected joke or an invitation to do something silly. The emotional rhythm of your days becomes more predictable, and that predictability can start to feel like a cage. But here's the thing, humans are resilient. Even when those daily interactions are scarce, you find ways to adapt. Maybe you start talking to yourself more, and hey, that's perfectly fine. Maybe you strike up conversations with strangers more often or learn to appreciate the stillness in new ways. It's not easy, though, and it's okay to admit that. Because while living alone can bring a sense of independence, it also brings an undeniable emotional challenge, a kind of longing for connection that's as human as it gets. Number 6, difficulty in creating and sticking to a structured daily routine. Living alone as an older person comes with its perks: freedom, peace, and the sweet silence of your own space. But what they don't often mention is how tricky it can be to create, let alone stick to, a structured daily routine. It sounds simple, right? Wake up, do your thing, rinse, repeat. Yet, without someone else around to anchor you, the days can blur together, and time starts to slip through your fingers in the strangest ways. First off, let's talk about the mornings. When there's no one to nudge you out of bed, it's easy to let yourself linger. Maybe you'll hit snooze once, then twice, and before you know it, half the morning has vanished. Without a clear reason to jumpstart your day, the bed can feel like the most inviting and dangerous trap. You tell yourself you'll get moving in a few minutes, but a few minutes turns into scrolling on your phone, staring at the ceiling, or just existing. There's no rush, after all, right? But that lack of urgency can snowball fast. Now, let's move to the middle of the day. When you're living alone, there's no natural rhythm to follow, no other person's schedule to sync with. Meals? You eat when you remember, which sometimes means at odd hours. Workouts? Sure, you'll get to it later. Chores? Maybe tomorrow. Time stretches out endlessly, and without external cues or a shared routine to guide you, it can feel like you're floating untethered. You might even start skipping tasks altogether, convincing yourself they don't matter or can wait for another day. The challenge isn't just about starting tasks, it's about sticking with them. Let's say you decide you're going to wake up at 7 a.m., go for a walk, and then tackle a to-do list. Great plan, right? But without anyone to hold you accountable, that motivation can fizzle out by day 2. Who's going to notice if you don't stick to it? Nobody. So, you skip the walk, let the to-do list gather dust, and before you know it, you're back in the spiral of unstructured, aimless days. Evenings are another beast. Without someone around to share dinner or wind down with, you might find yourself eating in front of the TV, mindlessly flipping channels or scrolling through your phone. Nights can feel endless, and it's all too easy to stay up way too late, which throws off the next morning, and then the cycle starts all over again. The hardest part is that it's all on you. You're the only one responsible for creating structure in your life, and when you're older, that can feel overwhelming. Sure, it's nice to have freedom, but freedom without boundaries can be exhausting. It takes real effort to push through the inertia and build habits that stick, and honestly, some days, it feels like the hardest thing in the world. Number 7, lack of motivation to dress up or maintain personal appearance. Let's be honest, when you live alone, the pressure to look good can slowly fade into the background. After all, who's there to notice? Nobody's judging you if your hair's a little wild or if you've been wearing the same comfy old sweater for 3 days straight. There's no one around to raise an eyebrow if your socks don't match or if your shaving routine has become, let's say, flexible. It's one of those things people don't really warn you about, how easy it is to stop caring about your appearance when you're the only one around to see it. And at first, it feels like freedom. No more dressing to impress, no need to worry about anyone's opinions. You can roll out of bed, throw on whatever's nearest, and go about your day without a second thought. But over time, this can sneakily morph into a habit that's hard to shake. Suddenly, you realize it's been weeks since you wore something other than sweatpants, or months since you bothered with that perfume or cologne you used to love. You might even start avoiding mirrors, not out of shame, but because you just stop thinking about it. Here's the kicker, it's not necessarily about vanity. It's about how your personal appearance ties into how you feel. When you're not getting dressed up or putting effort into how you look, it can affect your mood more than you'd expect. It's like a slow, invisible drain on your motivation. Sure, you might still get through your daily tasks, but there's something about the act of grooming, dressing up, or styling your hair that makes you feel alive, even purposeful. When that disappears, it can leave a subtle but undeniable void. The thing is, living alone means there's no external push to snap you out of it. When you share space with others, you're more likely to feel accountable for how you present yourself. Even if it's just a casual nudge, someone saying, "Hey, you look nice today," or "Is that what you're wearing?" It reminds you to care. Without that, the only voice reminding you to take care of yourself is your own, and let's face it, that voice doesn't always speak up. And it's not just about the big things, like putting on a sharp outfit. Even the small acts of self-care can start to slip. Maybe you used to style your hair just for fun, or you liked experimenting with bold colors or accessories. Living alone can make those little joys feel less urgent, less necessary. But here's the catch, they're not for others. They're for you. Reclaiming those moments of effort can remind you that how you feel matters, even if no one else is around to see it. So yes, the temptation to let things slide is real. It happens to the best of us. But putting in that little bit of effort, choosing a bright shirt, fixing your hair, even just moisturizing your face, can be a quiet act of self-love. And sometimes, that's exactly what you need to remind yourself that you're worth it. Even on the days when it feels like nobody's watching. Number 8, struggling with boredom or lack of mental stimulation. Let's be real, living alone as an older person can sometimes feel like stepping into an endless loop of sameness. You wake up, do your morning routine, and then, what? Sure, you might have a hobby or a favorite TV show, but when you're on your own, it's easy for your days to start blending together. The problem isn't just finding things to do, it's finding things that actually light you up, that keep your mind engaged and make time fly by instead of dragging on endlessly. The thing about boredom is that it doesn't just show up like a slap in the face. It sneaks in quietly, during those long afternoons when you've already done the crossword, tidied up the house, and checked your phone for messages that never came. It's that moment when you realize you're sitting there, not really doing anything, but not really sure what you want to do either. It's like your brain is itching for something, some kind of challenge or distraction, but nothing feels quite right. And then there's the mental stimulation piece. When you live alone, your brain doesn't get the same kind of workout it used to. You're not bouncing ideas off someone else, debating silly things, or just chatting about how your day went. Those little interactions might seem insignificant, but they keep your mind sharp. Without them, it's easy to feel like your thoughts are stuck in a rut, spinning the same wheels over and over. You might even find yourself craving a good argument or a conversation that makes you think in a way you haven't in a while. Here's the kicker, staying mentally engaged when you're on your own takes effort. And let's face it, some days, the effort just feels like too much. You could pick up a book, start a puzzle, or even try learning something new, but sometimes the motivation just isn't there. And without anyone around to nudge you or join in, it can feel a bit lonely tackling these things solo. Plus, there's no one to share the little victories with, like finally finishing that 1,000-piece puzzle or mastering a tricky skill. Boredom, though, isn't just about having nothing to do, it's also about a lack of meaning. When your days start to feel repetitive, it's easy to wonder, what's the point of all this? It's not that you're unhappy, necessarily, but there's a kind of flatness to life that creeps in when your mind isn't being challenged. The trick is finding ways to inject variety and novelty into your days, but that's often easier said than done. At the end of the day, struggling with boredom or a lack of mental stimulation is one of those things nobody really warns you about when you live alone. It's not just about keeping busy, it's about finding things that make you feel alive, curious, and connected, even if it's just with yourself. Some days you'll nail it, and other days you won't, and that's okay. It's all part of the journey. Number 9. Missing out on important events or updates due to lack of social connections. Living alone can feel like a breath of fresh air, your space, your time, your life. But there's a side to it that doesn't always hit you right away. It's the quiet realization that when you're not as socially connected, you start missing things. Big things, little things, the stuff in between. And the worst part? Sometimes you don't even realize what you're missing until it's too late. When you're on your own, there's no one casually dropping bits of news at the dinner table or reminding you about something you completely forgot. There's no "did you hear about this?" or "you know that's happening tomorrow, right?" Instead, you're left to rely on your own radar to pick up on what's going on around you. And let's be honest, life moves fast, and radar can fail. Without those everyday conversations or shared moments, staying in the loop can start to feel like chasing a train that's always just out of reach. The small updates slip away first. A friend's promotion, someone's birthday, or an event you might have loved to attend, all things you might have caught if you were more plugged in. But when you're living solo, there's no steady stream of casual reminders to jog your memory or keep you informed. Suddenly, you're that person who's constantly late to the party, figuratively and literally. Then there are the bigger things, the ones that really sting. A family gathering you didn't hear about until after it happened. A health scare someone assumed you already knew about. Decisions made, milestones passed, and you're left sitting there, wondering how it all happened without you. It's not always intentional, people just assume you're clued in. After all, why wouldn't you be? But when you're not part of the everyday chatter, you're not part of the updates either. And let's talk about technology. Sure, there are phones, social media, and all sorts of ways to stay connected. But it's not the same. A quick text or a social media post doesn't replace real, in-the-moment conversations. Sometimes, you might not even know what to look for or who to check in with. And let's face it, reaching out all the time to stay in the loop can feel awkward, almost like you're forcing yourself into spaces you're not naturally part of anymore. The isolation can build up over time, too. You start to feel like you're on the outside looking in. The world keeps moving, spinning faster every day, and you're standing still, trying to piece together the puzzle from scraps of information. It can feel lonely, sure, but more than that, it feels disorienting. Like you've lost your place in the flow of things, and no one's noticed you've drifted. Living alone isn't just about solitude, it's about navigating a world that doesn't pause for you. And sometimes, the hardest part is realizing how easy it is to fade into the background when no one's there to pull you back into the center of things. Number 10. Emotional strain from seeing children busy with their own lives. Living alone as an older person has its challenges, and one that can sneak up on you is the emotional strain of watching your children live their own lives, busy, bustling, and often distant. You know it's natural, even expected. They're supposed to grow up, spread their wings, and build their own worlds. That's the circle of life, right? But understanding it doesn't always make it easier. There's a gap, a quiet ache, when you realize that the people you poured your heart and soul into are now too preoccupied to call, visit, or check in as often as you'd like. At first, it might not hit you. Maybe you even feel proud, seeing them thrive and handle responsibilities. But over time, that pride can mix with something else. A kind of loneliness you weren't expecting. You start noticing the long stretches of silence between calls, the way holidays feel less full, the way they're always just so busy when you ask about spending time together. It's not that they don't care, they absolutely do, but their lives are demanding. Work, kids of their own, social obligations, they're juggling a lot. But still, there's that little voice in the back of your mind whispering questions. Do they think about you the way you think about them? Do they realize how much you miss them? Does it bother them at all when days or weeks go by without talking? And then there's the emotional tightrope you have to walk. You don't want to seem clingy or make them feel guilty for having their own lives. You don't want to be that parent, the one who constantly reminds them how much you miss them or how quiet the house feels without them. So, you hold back. You keep the conversations light, focusing on their updates, their milestones, their stories. But deep down, there's a part of you that just wants to say, I miss you. I'd really love to see you more often. It's not all bad, of course. The moments when they do visit or call can feel like pure gold. A 10-minute phone call can light up your whole week. A simple "how are you" can feel like a warm hug through the phone. But sometimes, those moments also carry a bittersweet edge. You're grateful for them, but they remind you of how much you miss the closeness you once had, when they were little, when your lives were intertwined in ways that felt unbreakable. And then there's the realization that their busyness isn't just about them, it's about you, too. Living alone magnifies these feelings. If you had a partner, a roommate, or even a pet, the gaps might not feel so wide. But when it's just you, those gaps can feel like canyons. Here's the thing, though, this isn't about blame or resentment. It's about love. The fact that you feel this way shows how deeply you care. And while it's not easy, finding ways to nurture yourself, whether it's reaching out to friends, joining a community, or even just writing them a letter, can help soften the edges of that ache. Because at the end of the day, love is a two-way street, and even if they're busy, they love you back. Sometimes, that's enough to hold on to. Number 11, nostalgia or sadness over memories of raising children or past marital life. living alone as an older person often brings quiet moments, but not all of them are peaceful. Sometimes, in that stillness, memories come flooding in, uninvited and unfiltered. You might find yourself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the same spot where someone else used to sit, and suddenly, it's not just a chair anymore. It's a reminder of laughter, arguments, love, and the life you used to have. Nostalgia can be beautiful, but it can also tug at your heart in ways you didn't expect. There's something bittersweet about looking back. On one hand, those memories are treasures, moments of raising kids, sharing meals, or just existing alongside someone else in the same space. On the other hand, those same memories can sting a little, like an ache you can't quite shake. You might remember the sound of tiny feet running down the hallway or the way the house felt alive during family gatherings. Now, it's just you, and while the quiet might have its own charm, it's not the same. And here's the tricky part: nostalgia doesn't ask permission. It can hit you out of nowhere. Maybe it's a smell, like a certain meal you used to cook, or a song that takes you back to a road trip from years ago. Maybe it's a random object, a photo, a piece of jewelry, even an old coffee mug. Suddenly, you're transported to a different time, and for a moment, it feels so real you can almost touch it. Then, just as quickly, it's gone, and you're left sitting there, wondering how time moved so fast. Sadness often tags along with those memories. It's not always overwhelming, it's more like a shadow that lingers. You might find yourself missing the chaos of family life, even the messy parts. You'd give anything to hear a slammed door followed by an exasperated mom, or dad, again. Or you think about those shared routines with a partner, making dinner together, arguing over the best way to fold laundry, or just sitting on the couch in comfortable silence. They were just regular moments back then, but now they feel like chapters from a story you can't reread. Sometimes, this sadness comes with guilt. You might catch yourself wondering, did I make the most of those years? Could I have done things differently? It's easy to slip into a loop of what-ifs when you're alone with your thoughts. But here's the thing, those years were never meant to be perfect. They were messy, complicated, and beautiful in their own way, just like life itself. The challenge is learning how to honor those memories without letting them consume you. It's about finding joy in the past without losing sight of the present. Easier said than done, right? But it's possible. Sometimes, it's about creating new routines or finding little rituals that bring you comfort. Maybe it's as simple as lighting a candle for someone you miss or journaling about those moments when they come to mind. In the end, nostalgia and sadness are part of the package. They remind you of the love you've given and the life you've lived. And while they can be heavy at times, they're also proof of how much those moments mattered. That's something worth holding on to, even when it hurts. Number 12, loneliness from not having a spouse to share daily life with. Living alone can seem like the dream for those who value independence. No compromises, no disagreements over how to load the dishwasher, no sharing the remote. But when you're older and living solo, there's this ache that creeps in, one that no amount of hobbies, routines, or distractions can completely chase away. It's the loneliness of not having someone to share the little, ordinary moments with, and it has a way of settling into the corners of your life. Let's face it, life's most mundane moments feel different when you're by yourself. Eating dinner alone at a table set for one? It's a quiet that isn't always peaceful. There's no one asking, "How was your day?" or laughing at the silly thing that happened at the store. It's just you, and while you can distract yourself with a TV show or some background noise, it's not the same as having someone there, sharing that space and energy with you. Even something as simple as saying goodnight to someone can leave a void when it's missing. And mornings? Waking up to an empty house can hit harder than you'd expect. There's no one to greet, no coffee brewing unless you make it, and no shared rhythm to kick off the day. You're not coordinating schedules or chatting about what's ahead. Instead, You're left with your thoughts, and while that's not always bad, it can sometimes feel too quiet, too solitary. What makes it tougher is that sharing your daily life isn't just about the big, meaningful conversations, it's also about the tiny, seemingly insignificant ones. The quick, offhand comments, the shared jokes, the comfort of knowing someone's in the next room if you need them. Those small, fleeting moments weave a kind of safety net that makes life feel fuller, even on the dullest days. Without them, there's a sense of emptiness that lingers in their absence. Then there's the weight of decision-making. When you're alone, every choice, no matter how small, rests on your shoulders. What to eat, what to watch, whether to fix the leaky faucet now or wait, it's all on you. Having a spouse isn't just about sharing the workload, it's about having someone to bounce thoughts off, to validate your decisions, or even just to debate whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It's the shared effort, the give and take, that makes even the most tedious choices feel less heavy. And don't get me started on the tough days. When you're sick, feeling down, or just need a hug, the absence of a spouse can feel like a hollow ache. There's no one to hold you, no one to reassure you that things will be okay. Sure, you might have friends or family, but it's not the same. A spouse is someone who sees you at your worst and stays anyway. When you're missing that presence, even the strongest person can feel fragile. Living alone as an older person isn't just about solitude, it's about the longing for connection, for someone who gets your quirks and shares your life. It's about missing that unspoken understanding, that effortless companionship that makes the ordinary feel extraordinary. And sometimes, it's about learning to live with the quiet and finding ways to make peace with it, even when it feels impossibly loud. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope this video gave you some valuable insights into what living alone as an older person is really like. It's not always easy, but with the right mindset, it can be incredibly rewarding. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content like this, and share it with someone who might benefit from these tips. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.